Hello, welcome to Mad Dodge Productions. I am the Mad Libertarian, and I'm here with my panel today to do part two of the Libertarian Party platform. We have Libertarian Rants on for the first time ever. Go ahead and tell us about yourself. Why did you start your YouTube channel, sir?
Yeah, well, thanks first for inviting me on. Never done anything quite like this. Started my YouTube channel, frankly, because I thought there was a missing market of really short kind of videos on libertarianism, 2 to 5 minutes long. So those are the kinds of videos I always loved on libertarianism. And so I kind of decided to just sort of fill that niche market, I guess, if you will. Economics, libertarianism, politics, all that kind of stuff is something that I'm kind of obsessed with. And so I figured, what the hell? I got a microphone. Why don't I just start saying shit into the mic and sending it out to people? And it's growing. It's been growing kind of slowly, but, you know, I just started a month ago or something. I don't know when it was exactly. But so far, I'm happy. There's a few people listening, and hey, that's more than I could have asked for, I guess.
When did you first get into libertarian politics, may I ask? We don't need to know your age. Just has it been a few years, or are you new to it?
No, that's okay. I would say, you know, I was actually a 2004 Bush supporting conservative Republican. And then I heard Ron Paul speak. I think that's probably a relatively common thing for libertarians. I heard Ron Paul speak, and I always thought he was kind of a nut. But then there was a period of time where I kind of stepped back and I asked myself, I told myself to assume that I don't know anything and read all the things I can get, especially things I disagree with, and try and figure out if it makes sense. And so during that time, I read a lot of communist literature, Marx and Engels, a lot of socialistic, a lot of Keynes. And I also read a lot of Ludwig von Mises and F.A. Hayek and those sorts of things. And from that, I kind of said, you know, there's a lot of things in the conservative Republican typical leanings that I find to be kind of BS. There are some things I still agree with, of course, on the economic side of things. And so from there, I kind of slowly transformed, and I read a lot of work from Henry Hazlitt. He wrote Economics in One Lesson, which I really like. And like I said before, I listened to a lot of what Ron Paul had to say. And from that, I kind of started slowly realizing, you know, I think I'm a libertarian. And from there, it just kind of developed. And, you know, to this day, I'm a political economic junkie.
So, couple questions. How do you feel about the Cato Institute, first off?
The Cato Institute? I love the Cato Institute. I mean, I'm not heavily involved. I'm not a donator or anything like that, but I'll go to the website at least twice a week or so and read the articles that they've got going on there.
Yeah, I tend to lean more towards Mises than Cato, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really have a strong opinion either way. It depends article to article. Some articles I see and I'm like, all right, that's just not that interesting to me, or I don't really care. But most of them I do enjoy. That's actually, it's funny you bring them up, because Cato Institute does put really, really long videos on YouTube. And those are one of the few that I'll sit down with some food and I'll eat and I'll watch the whole thing. So, I mean, I enjoy what they put out, and they're certainly they were certainly a source for a lot of information that helped me kind of become more libertarian and shy away from the strictly conservative Republican side of things.
All right. One last question before we dig into the party platform. We're doing economics today. Well, that's what we're going to start off with. We might be able to wrap up the rest of it. There's only a third section after that. That's it. So, but how do you feel about Tom Woods? I happen to like. I think he's a great historian, and I happen to listen to his podcast every day.
I love Thomas Woods. Actually, I saw him speak live 2 years ago or so in Boston, and it was really great. I love Thomas Woods. His book, what is it, 22 Things About American History They Don't Teach You in School or something like that. That was a fantastic book. And just as with anything, I take everything I read with a grain of salt, some large, some small. And a lot of the things he wrote in that book, which I never knew, I would look it up and I would say to myself, holy shit, there's actually a lot of other things corroborating what he says. I'm a big fan of Thomas Woods. I got to meet him very briefly. I didn't have his book or receipt at the time, so he probably didn't want to pay me much attention, as there were a lot of other customers who had given him money there. But no, I'm a big fan of his.
All right, cool. Wolfshot, you want to shout out your channel real quick before we dig in? I don't think Pirate has a channel. Do you, bro?
Yes, I do.
Oh, shit. I forgot. I'm sub to it, too. What a dick. Go ahead and show your shit for a second.
It's cool. It's cool. It's just the Pirate Nation. It's just a video game channel for right now, but, you know, other content is going to be up whenever I get a desktop. So, yeah, you can go check it out if you want. Or not. Either way,
man, I'll drop a link in the show notes for you. I don't think I've been trying to do that now ever since the last Libertarian stream. Review the Earth had me post a bunch of links, so I was like, well, I should probably do that for all the guests.
sounds good.
And yeah, Wolf said hold on, so I think she has to step away for a minute. She can shill her stuff here in a minute. Let's look at this. So. Economic liberty is number 2.0. Let's see if I can screen share it. I'm really bad at the screen sharing thing.
And suddenly the stream crashed.
There we go. All right. Now, libertarians want all members of society to have abundant opportunities to achieve economic success. A free and competitive market allocates resources in the most efficient manner. Each person has the right to offer goods and services to others on the free market. The only proper role of government in the economic realm is to protect property rights, adjudicate disputes, and provide a legal framework in which voluntary trade is protected. All efforts by government to redistribute wealth or to control or manage trade are improper in a free society. Let's go to you first, Libertarian Lance. What do you think about that?
I think that's pretty good. That reminds me a lot of the argument against economic calculation against socialists and statists. I think it's a good stance to take against it. As they mention, allocate resources. That's a very, very important point when talking about economics and government. When you have a one-size-fits-all institution diverting resources to here and not there, or to here and not there, then you will, especially in a country of 320 plus million people, you will not have that institution making wise decisions. Even if you have the most brilliant human minds in that institution, they can't possibly get or acquire that information quick enough to even make the correct decisions. So I'm liking what I'm reading here. To be quite honest, even though I am a libertarian, this is the first time I've actually sat down and read their economic platform. I mean, I know what it is, but I've never read it in the Libertarian Party's words itself.
Neither had I. That's not to cut you off. You can continue. Just neither have I. That's why I wanted to do these streams. So yeah, go ahead, sir.
No, it's fine. I actually wanted to ask a question because I'm not. I don't know how you want to do this. Like, have me talk for a while, or is it more of a back and forth exchange?
Well, these streams usually break down into a back and forth argument, so you'll notice that here after we dig into the actual like property and contracts. I'm sure that's going to have something from Wolf and Pirate, so it ends up into a back and forth debate usually.
Oh, totally.
Which I'm fine with.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. So I think maybe the one thing that might be missing, I'm trying to read it real quick, is contracts. Protecting contracts, because that's another extraordinarily important point to make, because contracts can actually act as sort of something contrary to what libertarians would generally accept, right? So it's not okay for me to aggress against you. But if we have a contract that says, you know, I can do something that would violate your private property rights, and in turn you give that to me, right? That's kind of an extreme example. That's the importance of contracts. Oh, and I'm an idiot because it says it right below that. Yeah, okay. So it wasn't in the main little header here, but I, you know, if they hadn't put it in there, I would have wanted them to put it in there, because that is a very important part of the economy, especially within a libertarian free market type of economy.
Yeah, I would even say that's one of the few powers the government has, is to enforce contracts.
Yeah, 100%. I would certainly agree to that. In fact, that's an answer to a lot of the criticisms that a lot of people make of free markets and libertarianism, is that, you know, some company might have a contract with another company and in that contract, they're allowed to do something that might violate some natural right or something. And people will say, well, do you agree with that? And I say, yes. And they're like, well, how? Because you're a libertarian, you're not supposed to agree with something like that. I say, yeah, but it's a contract. It kind of makes things different. It allows for flexibility within the economy.
Pirate, do you have any thoughts on that, or should we move on to contracts? Because I have something to say about that.
Well, yeah, well, I can say something real fast. I think that this little first bit here that we've read, we could all pretty much really agree is a good little base of trade there, right, about the government and how much it can control. I agree with it because, you know, how we run it in the pirate nation is I'm the king, you see, but I don't go and tell these other ships that are in my nation how they can trade with, you know, ports. I don't tell them, no, you don't go there, you don't go here, you don't, you know, I don't limit them. I don't tell them they can't do something. They're pirates too. They can live as free as they want. So that's how it operates in my mind is, you know, we can't tell you what you can and can't do. As the leaders, we're there to protect you. We're there to protect your rights, not.
Well, and since you're going with the pirate metaphor, so every captain is the king on his own ship, right?
Yes, but there is one that dictates between, you know, disputes between the captains. Let's see, you say protect property rights. Well, we don't really have that problem. Yeah, adjust disputes and or not adjust, adjudicate disputes. It's really tiny on my screen.
I wish they would have put mitigate disputes instead of that stupid word I have a hard time saying.
Right. Mitigate.
The kids are outside. Let me turn SpongeBob off, guys. I'm sure it's bleeding over on the mic.
No, I like it. No, keep it. It's awesome.
All right, you win. SpongeBob in the background.
Wait,
hey Wolf, are you back?
Can you get a copyright strike for that though? Wait, maybe you do want to turn it off.
We are on step 2, or section 2, economic liberty. We read the opening statement. So if you want to read that real quick, I'm screen sharing it, or I sent the link. It'll be bigger in a separate window, I'm sure.
Oh, can you hear me? I lost connection for a little bit.
Oh yeah, you're back.
Okay.
Okay, so it says the only proper role of government in the economic realm is to protect property. Okay.
Well, and adjudicate disputes.
Such as?
I guess in this instance, dispute between civilians, citizens.
Yeah, as in a judge has the right to mitigate disputes. He gets to enforce the contracts.
Only Judge Judy can judge me.
Right.
Actually,
I hate that bitch.
That's fairly accurate in a sense, because if I had a contract with you that said, I'm going to pay you this, and in 2 months you got to give me this, and I pay you, and in 2 months you don't give it to me, hey, we might go see Judge Judy. And
unless there's a wedding cake involved and you're a faggot, that's a problem.
Well, yeah, neither of those things ring true for me.
Oh, since she had to bring it up, should people have to bake
bring
the
it up.
Nazi
I did
cake?
goddamn bring it up because they were under contract.
Okay, but do people have to bake the Nazi cake? Libertarian rants. This was a big thing with
If there
Gary
was a
Johnson.
contract signed, they have to make the Nazi fucking cake.
Yeah, if a
But
contract.
do they have the right to not sign the contract?
But they signed the contract.
No, but Gary said that they had to sign the contract, that it was discrimination to not sign the contract.
For the gay cake, they signed the contract. They paid their money. Where's the cake?
You know this happened in Oregon, right? And they said that
This
they
happened
didn't sign
in
the
3
contract here
different
in the local
states,
news.
actually.
Well, if they
Okay,
signed a contract to do something, if they agreed to do something, and another party was relying on them to do that thing, and they broke the contract, that would certainly be a breach of contract, and some sort of punitive measure would need to be taken place. You all can still hear me, right? Because my freaking
Yes.
All right, because it's like thunderstorming, and it says I have no internet. I don't know, it's weird. Anyway, so yeah, if they signed a contract, then that would be a breach of contract. But before they sign that contract, they have every right to not pick up that pen and sign it. They have every right to say, no, I don't want to give a cake to whoever I want for whatever reason I want.
which would be my argument. In Oregon, I don't believe they signed the contract. I don't know about the other 2 states, but in the local news, all they did was say, oh, you want a gay wedding cake? We don't believe in that. And they turned it down. And then all hell broke loose. They got sued, and now they're out of business.
Yeah, and you know why they got sued? Because they threatened their family. They threatened to take their kids away.
I don't remember that.
Fucked up shit.
I don't remember that part of the story, but I haven't looked into it too much. It doesn't affect me, so I really didn't care about
I gather that's the whole kind of thing with this, is it doesn't affect you, therefore who gives a shit?
No, but first they came after the gay cakes, then they came after the Nazi cakes. I get your point. You got to protect everybody's individual rights.
No. What I'm saying is, since it doesn't affect you, you don't give a shit. That's kind of the blanket of what I'm seeing with libertarian politics. If it doesn't affect me, I don't give a fuck about you or yours.
But you care about you and yours, so you should defend you and yours.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I said,
and I should defend my family unit.
Until that
And
fucking
my
fire eats up your house and your family's in it.
Oh, hey, we're doing the platform. We're not going into all this other stuff we've argued about in past streams, Wolf.
That is libertarian, though. That is a libertarian argument to privatize police, fire.
It is a far, but we won't be at that point for a long time. So those arguments are invalid, because we got to move the pendulum over back to liberty, and then we could argue about the petty stuff later.
I don't think it's petty. My house was on fire. I'd want the fire department to put out.
And right now you have them. And you're not ever going to not have them. There's no way society is going to be like, let's jump off that AMCAP fucking diving board. There's no way. They're not going to do it.
It did happen. It happened in my state.
Are you from Georgia?
I'm from Virginia.
I'm from Georgia.
Dude in the mountains didn't pay his dues. House caught on fire. Fire jumped to the other house. Firefighters came. They put the other house out. Didn't put the guy's house out with the dues. The fire killed 2 dogs and a couple cats.
Hey, Wolf, since I'm presenting to everyone and screen sharing, can you keep an eye in the chat? I usually like to, but I can't right now.
Nothing's happening at the moment.
Okay, I see there's 3 people are in there, so. But yeah, if you can go over there and just keep an eye on it, that'd be awesome until I'm done screen sharing.
Yeah,
well, since we were talking about contracts, let's move on to that. Section 2.1, property and contracts. As respect for property rights is fundamental to maintaining a free and prosperous society, it follows that freedom to contract and obtain, retain, profit from, manage, or dispose of one's property must be upheld. Libertarians would free property owners from government restrictions on their right to control and enjoy their property, as long as their choices do not harm or infringe on the rights of others. Eminent domain, civil asset forfeiture, on profits, governmental production mandates, and governmental controls on prices of goods and services, including wages, rent, and interest, or abridgment of such fundamental rights. For voluntary dealings among private entities, parties should be free to choose with whom they trade and set whatever trade terms are mutually agreeable. So are they talking about price gouging? Are they talking about these loan sharks? I think they are. I think those people would be free to do what they want in this type of scenario. Is that necessarily good? I do want the right to do whatever I want on my own property. Right now, we have to pay for zoning stuff or to build a shed in inner cities and stuff like that. I think it's ridiculous. If you own the property, you should be able to put whatever you want on it. You want a bunch of chicken coops in LA? I don't give a shit as long as you own the house. Let's go on their rant.
There was an interesting thing. What's his name? Adam Carolla, the comedian. If anybody has any free time, go look up what he talks about when he lived in California and he wanted to do something to his house. He eventually had to say, screw this. He said the amount of rules, regulations, permits, and permissions that you had to acquire from the government to do something simple on your own house was so monumental and so monolithic that he said, screw this, I'm just not even going to do it. And, you know, they start with one thing and it generally doesn't end there. They'll go on to the 10 millionth thing. And, you know, at a certain point you say, man, I can't even use the screws that I want to use because a government inspector hasn't inspected this screw and I can't put it in my wall to hang a freaking diploma. I think that's just an interesting little tidbit. It is what's the word? Just a little story that he gave, which I always found to be kind of interesting.
Anecdote? Is that the word you were looking for?
Yeah, anecdote. There you go.
But yeah, I used to live in LA and my aunt still lives there in my grandma's house. And she just wants to get out from underneath it because she can't even really repair the roof without a fucking permit guy coming out and inspecting shit, which costs even more than it would cost to hire the contractors. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just for repairs, not in addition to the house.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's important to point out that a lot of people, I don't know how many people would actually support those kind of permits and laws, but anyone who does might say, yeah, but there's some good that comes from that. And you'd have to go through a lot of numbers to get to the bottom of it. But I would argue that any good that might come from something like that, the good is vastly outweighed by the negative repercussions of having people who have leaky roofs who have to wait weeks, if not months, to get somebody out to say, yeah, you're permitted by the state government of California to fix your own roof or to put a pool in your backyard.
Or even worse, man. Let's say they find mold because of the leak. Now you need a mold inspector to come out and make sure you don't have the dreaded black mold. And if you do have that, then you got to rip out whole sections of your house. Like, the shit is ridiculous.
Yeah, and if it was me personally, time would be of the utmost essence because, man, I'm allergic as hell to mold. I'd have to get that shit out of there as quickly as possible. I'd call the government up and I'd be like, I don't have time health-wise to wait on you.
Yeah, no, but what I am concerned about is here in Oregon, they had these payday loans, right? And they were charging 30 or 40% interest on people living paycheck to paycheck. So they'd pay the loan back after they got the paycheck, and then they'd take another loan out. And they were just gradually getting in more and more debt. It was pretty much legal loan sharking. Is there any way we could actually regulate that, or should we just let it go?
Well, as far as payday loans go, I mean, I guess you could consider it legalized loan sharking, but at the end of the day, is there any gun to the head of anyone? You can talk about, well, these people are in a bad...
Yeah, I was going to say, somebody with 3 kids living paycheck to paycheck and their car breaks down, there kind of is a gun to their head, because if they lose their car, they lose their job, and then they lose their kids. I mean, like, there is a domino effect here. I kind of was for in Oregon when they put in some regulations on that. So I think this is something we can disagree on and actually debate a little bit. So I'll let you continue.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to feed into what Wolfshot said about if it doesn't affect me, I don't give a fuck or something, which is not true. I care about a lot of people, and I care a lot about a lot of things that have nothing to do with me. But there has to be a point where you do say personal responsibility has to come into play. If you have 3 children and you are somebody who needs to get a payday loan, I would question, why did you have those children? Number one, and number two, and more importantly, and I actually did a video on this, is we tend to think erroneously that if the government doesn't take care of these people, then nobody will. And there's no private charity, there's no private donations or anything like that. When the government is far worse than private charities in terms of getting money to actual people and not wasting it.
Oh, yeah, no. And backing up a little bit on that, if there was no government charities, private charities would be even bigger, right? So,
yeah, certainly. And I mean, there's the one thing that I mentioned in my one video, which I think is just a very telling fact, is that when you talk about the war on poverty and things like that and welfare programs to help people like those who would go for a payday loan, the fact of the matter is for every $1 million that goes through the government to go to those welfare programs, roughly, it's on average, roughly about 70% of it gets tied up in insurance and overhead and ends up in bureaucrats' wallets and all sorts of nonstop nonsense. And but the opposite is generally true for private charities. About 70% of it actually ends up in the hands of those who it was intended for, and only about 30% of it ends up in the actual organization. And you cut taxes, you cut regulations and all that big picture stuff. People have more money to spend. And can anybody hear me?
Oh, no, you didn't lose nothing. I just stopped presenting to everybody for a minute.
You know what's okay? Good.
I'm gonna go check my Twitter real quick and see if review wrote me back. So keep on talking.
Okay. I just wanted to say real quick, what's really weird is that even though I'm connected right now, the little icon at the bottom right of my screen has the triangle as if I have no internet. So it's the weirdest thing ever. So I don't know. But anyway, to finish my thought, so yeah, the opposite is generally true for private charities. And you could only imagine how better private charities would perform and how much more money would be given to private charities if roughly 2 to 3 trillion with a T dollars isn't extracted from the United States citizens in the form of taxation. It would only be better. Tax the churches? Sure.
So there was one thing that I got from that I sort of I don't have issue with. I just have questions about, like, what do you guys think about this counterfeit money that gets made? Like that fucks with things. So don't you think that the government needs to have some sort of not control per se, but some sort of eye on things at the very least to make sure that people aren't doing that, counterfeiting, throwing that into the economy?
I swear I'm not trying to be funny here, but do you mean counterfeiting as in what the Federal Reserve does?
Yeah, that was funny.
I was being serious. I wasn't sure.
I mean, I guess, yeah. What's the Federal Reserve been doing?
Taxation is theft, and the Fed, all that other shit.
Well, the federal, okay, first off, Wolf, it's not shit. Okay, the Federal Reserve came into existence in 1913.
Oh, no, I didn't mean it's shit. I meant other things. You know how you say and shit and other things.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, sorry. Congress has the right to print money. They gave that right up to the Federal Reserve. So if Congress took that right back and created the currency, they also have a right under the Constitution to enforce the counterfeit laws. So those would still be enforced. There wouldn't be people just printing $20 bills. Well, I mean, there is now, but that's
gold
not what
standard.
Okay.
We could go to a different standard. You could base it on the GDP.
A gold standard.
Well, I mean, some people say gold isn't a solid standard. So what about the gross domestic production of the United States? Base it on that.
My GDP standard.
Well, this is a fresh idea that just popped in my head. What about that idea?
You know what? It's all about having a currency that's tied to something and not fiat, meaning, well, essentially.
I know what it means.
Yeah.
I repeat that all the time.
Yeah, I know what it means.
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as it's tied to something, I guess it doesn't. Gold, I guess, could be. Well, I don't want to say arbitrary because it's not necessarily arbitrary, but yeah, as long as it's tied to something.
Yeah, but it's all arbitrary anyways because we make it have value. The only reason gold has value is because we make it that way. The only reason why diamonds have value is because we made it that way.
Yeah, and there's certainly truth to that, and it also has to do with scarcity and rarity.
No, that's bullshit. Diamonds aren't rare, neither is gold.
Well, yeah, I mean, diamonds is a whole nother story, which I'm sure you know about. The supply of diamonds is actually huge, and it shouldn't be worth as much. That's why
and same with gold. We put a heavy value on this.
Shine bright like a diamond.
I mean, if you really want to invest your money in something, invest it in copper.
True. I've heard that copper is like really fucking scarce in the world.
So
I actually used to do scrapping in college and made a decent coin from copper.
I mean, but anything we take, we're gonna put a value on it regardless. So arbitrary or not, physical or not, it has a value.
Of course, anything that gets traded, anything that trades hands, there will.
But it's not intrinsically valuable. It's because we make it so.
Well, gold, it certainly is. There are a lot of uses you can use for gold in electronics and things like that. But
how much though? Like take for instance a Cadillac converter, platinum, right? They used to steal them all the time because of how much platinum there was supposedly in it. It's only coated in platinum, and it's only like, God, it's not even. There's more chromium and something else in it than platinum, so it's not worth to take.
Yeah, and that's fine. So platinum is only coating this thing, and so
do you know what a Cadillac converter is?
Yeah, for your vehicle. Yeah. So there's only platinum coating it, and so there's something that has a perceived value, and I don't disagree with you that value is perceived and subjective. Of course it is, but. So yeah, people found out that, you know what, this is only coating this, and there's much more of another element that is of a surplus, and therefore this isn't worth stealing. I mean, is that what you're saying? I'm honestly asking.
I mean, there's no reason that platinum should be where it's at. There's no reason why gold should be as expensive as it is, because the only reason they only use gold very minimalistically in electronics. The amount of gold used in electronics is minute compared to our jewelry market. And I say that with a gold wedding ring around my finger.
Yeah.
So that's why. That's why it's so expensive, is because of the value we put on it.
Well, certainly. And also when you take a look at, when we say expensive, we're saying the word expensive in contrast to the American dollar. And it used to be that gold actually wasn't expensive. It was like, I think it was in the early 2000s, it was $300 an ounce or something like that. And now it's up to 17, 1800.
Should have never been that much to begin with, but that's just my opinion.
Well,
what was the inflation rates while we were on the gold standard compared to with fiat currency?
Oh, I'm not exactly sure what the inflation rates were. I think they were probably 1%, but that's kind of a guess, to be honest. I don't know, to be honest. But I just want to say one thing to Wolfshot. If you don't think that gold is worth that much, then don't buy it. That's fine. Don't invest in it. If you don't believe in it, don't invest in it. It's well within your right to think that. And I'm not saying you're wrong.
I know, but to base an entire system on gold, we've tried that. It didn't work out very well.
Well, the whole thing, it kind of doesn't matter to an extent of what it is, as long as it's rare, not rare, but as long as there's a limited supply of it. The problem is with the fiat currency, and you said you've talked about fiat currency quite a bit, is the fact that there is no scarcity whatsoever. So the potential value can go to zero. And that's not a big problem, by the way, if the Federal Reserve was responsible and didn't have the printing presses running 24/7. But the fact of the matter is by their printing presses being run 24/7, I'm speaking metaphorically, of course, because they don't actually print it. They just type the numbers into a bank account.
Well, and the other thing is that gold fluctuates. The value of gold fluctuates.
Yeah, and same does as for our fiat currency.
More so than paper money.
Well, it's tied. Well, it's not tied to our. But when we say the price of gold fluctuates, it's a lot that's baked into that price has a lot to do with the amount of money we're printing, the amount of money in circulation, the velocity of money.
So let me give you an example. From 1934 to 1970, the U.S. was on a partial gold standard, and the inflation adjusted of gold went from $50 to $200.
Well, let me give you an example, though, and I'm not trying to straw man your argument. I'm just saying a $20 bill in 1970 was worth about 4 or 5 times more than it is today. So inflation goes up no matter what you base your currency on. It's just the amount that it goes up by. It differs.
So when in the 1980s, I remember this, the inflation went up to 10%, and they did a whole commission hearing about it or whatever to returning to a gold standard, and the study found that it wasn't fruitful at all because the inflation was still the same.
Was this a private study or a government study? Because the government has an interest in keeping inflation high. It makes their loans easier to pay back.
It looks like it's a private study from what university? George Washington University School of Business.
Okay, can you put the link in the side chat? I'll check it out after the show. And
Yep.
We'll move on to the next bullet point. Let's see.
Hold on.
I'll go ahead and screen share again. All right, so this is the environment. We're on 2.2. Competitive free markets and property rights stimulate the technology innovations and behavioral changes required to protect our environment and ecosystems. Private landowners and conservation groups have a vested interest in resources. Governments are unaccountable for damage done to the environment. Enter Flint, Michigan there. But it doesn't say that. I'm just throwing it out there. And have a terrible track record when it comes to environmental protection. Protecting the environment requires a clear definition and enforcement of individual rights and responsibilities regarding resources like land, water, air, and wildlife. Where damages can be proven and quantified in the court of law, restitution to the injured parties must be required. Do you believe that we would just kill all the deer and just let the pour freaking oil into the water if it was a private system? Libertarians want. I mean, I don't. I do believe that there is a vested interest in keeping the environment good on your land, and if you pollute on someone else's land, they would sue you because they have a right to their property.
Yeah. Sorry, you can go ahead, Wolfshot. Were you going to say something?
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. If you're, it's one of those funny things that people generally accuse or criticize libertarians of being and not caring about the environment, when in fact private property rights takes care of a lot of those things. Considering the fact that you could certainly consider it an act of aggression if I took used oil and threw it on your lawn and prevented you from being able to use your lawn in any productive manner. I don't really think there's many libertarians worth their salt who would say, no, that's perfectly fine. So yeah, private property rights, a lot of these things will go back to that. I put blood, sweat, tears, money, all that stuff into my property. You don't have a right to come and destroy it with pollution or anything else.
Yeah, I would agree. I know Wolfshot disagrees. I don't know how Pirate thinks. Pirate, what's your idea?
Okay, well, you guys just let me finish what I'm saying here before you flip, because it's not what you think, okay? But this is one of those things like communism. It looks good on paper, but it doesn't necessarily work out right because of one key factor and one key factor only: laziness. There is an innate laziness to take care of the environment within the human race that it needs. There needs to be accountability of some sort on the environment within the government, because and I do agree with the statement that they have a terrible track record of this shit. They do. They're horrible at it, but that's not because the government has the control. That's because the people in control of the government aren't the best of fucking people. I mean, we've got to do something about the people that are in power, as opposed to, or well, you know, now you guys have to do something about the people that are in power, as opposed to just, you know, saying fuck it, the government can't control like this, and this, and this. Like, I understand the government does need to have less control. I agree with that. They're telling too many fucking people what they can and can't do, in my opinion, in the States.
Would you end the federal EPA and lower it down to the states at least? Would you meet us halfway?
That's something that I'd have to, you know, consider for a bit before I could give you a definite answer on that one.
Well, may I bring up the point? In the Constitution, all rights that are not given to the federal government are reserved to the states and the people. The federal government was never given the right to manage the environment.
So it falls
Fuck
upon
the environment. Fuck it. Burn it all.
fucking Wolf.
No, Wolf,
Burn it all.
that right would be reserved to the states, is what I'm saying.
The state, yeah, fuck it. State, yeah, whatever. I don't give a shit. Burn it all to the ground. Drown it in oil. It'll be great.
Wait,
fuck it.
No, funny you say burn it. Funny you say burn it, because you know where I live, the Cascades. You know what happens every year? They fucking let it burn.
You know what happened when we didn't have regulations? The entire Mississippi River caught on fire. Just throwing that out there. I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I don't know.
When we didn't have federal or state regulations or regulations at all, what are you talking?
We didn't have regulations when we didn't have regulations at all.
Okay.
Well, I'm saying meet up and let's go halfway. Let's lower it to the state level.
But it's still government, and you're still pissing and moaning about it.
But you can change it at the state level a lot easier than if I write a letter to the
EPA.
You? If I write a letter, if I write a letter to the EPA, they're gonna throw it away. If I write a letter to my governor, he'll have at least his aide read it because the governor actually cares, because we could vote him out.
No, I think you have this big conception that the state doesn't give a fuck about you either. You know why? Because they're politicians. Because it's still tied to the government. Sorry.
Well, you know what's funny though? After we kick it down to the states, I want to kick it down to the local level after that. So
I know you want to privatize everything. I know it's a lot of fun.
I'm trying to hit the 20-yard line at least here. Come on.
You're trying to hit that. Let's privatize every fucking thing on the planet.
Well, that's the touchdown, but I don't think I'm going to make a touchdown.
That's the touchdown. Yeah, let's set it all on. I'd rather set it all on fire first than privatize everything.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because they would do it before I would.
Should we move on, or do you want to keep talking about this?
No, you can keep talking. We can keep talking.
No, keep it up. Keep it up. It's fucking hilarious. I love it.
No. The private companies will just burn it down before I'll get a chance to.
No, they won't.
Oh no, not of course not. The fucking BP oil spill. That was a lot of fun. Fuck it. It was an incident. It wasn't an oil spill. It was just an incident.
Do you like driving in your car? There's risks we take for oil.
Cool.
Our calculated risks, and we try to mitigate them.
Let's have no regulations on that shit either. Fuck it.
I think the point.
Yeah, Libertarian.
Let him finish. No. Mad Dog, I want to hear him finish. Go for it.
Okay, well, there is BP was highly regulated.
Not you, Mad Dog. I want to hear the other Libertarian.
Oh. Okay. All right. Cool.
Well, no, I was just going to say this is just yet again another thing where people misrepresent libertarians as being a group of people who don't care about the environment. We care quite a bit.
I think I'm representing you guys pretty well.
Well, you're not. You're certainly not representing me very well.
Well, you're not representing me very well at all. However.
Yeah, and that's fine. But no, the issue is, did BP pay for this for the BP oil spill?
I don't actually remember. I actually don't remember.
Any punitive action being taken against them by government or private otherwise?
The state of Louisiana sued the shit out of them.
Yeah, they certainly did. And anyone whose private property was along the coast, or anybody whose property was affected by this, should get a great deal of money.
You know why they did that? Do you know why they did that? Because pressure from the federal government.
Do you think there was any
pressure? Well, it was the state government. It was the state of Louisiana.
And the federal government as well.
Oh, Obama's bitch ass. Yeah, but...
Oh, for fuck's sake. Get off of that.
Do you think the individual human beings put any pressure on them? And do you think there was an incentive for people to put...
Well, there was an absolute uproar, absolutely. I mean, there had to be. But do I think the corporations would have given a shit if that didn't take place? No, absolutely not.
Isn't BP owned by Great Britain? Isn't it British Petroleum?
Yes, it is British Petroleum.
Okay, so we're not even talking about a private company, Wolf. We're talking about a state-owned company by the UK.
But it's still a private company.
No,
it's not state-owned by the UK.
It's a private fucking company.
I'm mostly addressing the picture that is being painted of not having the federal government step in for people.
I know, you only care about yourselves. I got that.
No, couldn't be further from the truth. But
no. You've already said it, though. You guys have already said it. If it doesn't happen to me, I don't care. It's already been demonstrated. I swear.
I never said that, actually, but... the fact of the matter is, if you have land that was affected by the BP oil spill, again, there is no libertarian worth their salt that would say, well, you are not deserving of something from BP. So you can take from that what you'd like, but this assertion that we don't give a shit and that nothing should be done to BP after that is simply erroneous. It's false.
Yeah, and that there should be no regulations whatsoever.
No, but the regulations come as the punitive. If they mess up, they get sued and they go out of business.
They should have their regulations before they fuck up.
They already did, and it didn't help.
Well, you know how much? That's exactly the point. There were tons of to my knowledge, there's plenty of regulations saying you can't dump oil or you can't have an oil spill.
Well, no shit.
The fact of the matter is, we did, and this is actually a huge point. You say there's a problem, we need regulation, and then you breathe a sigh of relief as if it's never going to happen. The fact of the matter is, things happen. You have to retroactively.
No. It's not that I'm not fucking retarded. I know things happen, but did those BP executives get in trouble for anything of what happened? Were held accountable for their actions? You guys talk a big game about accountability until it comes to corporations.
Oh, you're gonna.
Let's not go into
You do.
corporations right now because that's not what we're talking about. Environment on this bullet point. I do want to move through the platform. So
I have plenty to say about that, but if you don't want to.
Oh, okay. If you want to respond to Wolfshot, she was directly responding to you, so go for it.
Yeah. I want to hear the response too.
Oh, well, as far as we don't care about corporations, we don't care about initiating any punitive action against them when they do something like BP.
No. I said you do care about corporations and you don't want punitive action against corporations because private companies are God or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, exactly. So that is not something I would say. I would never claim that no private institution or company should be granted immunity to any sort of punitive action that is taken against them for something wrong that they did. In fact, the vast majority of time you do see a company with something that resembles immunity. You can generally find the government at the bottom of all that. Generally, it's a law or it's some sort of legislation written that protects private industry, and they collude with one another to help the private industry that generally has a large lobbying arm in Washington, D.C. So
it's not the corporation's fault, it's the government's fault, even though they're in collusion with each other, as you said, sir.
May I respond to that? If you remove the regulations, there wouldn't be as many big corporations because small startups could start. Why do you think we have the big three?
Are you fucking kidding?
Well, may I finish? We have the big three car companies because there's so many car regulations right now that it's costs so much in paperwork that a new car company can't start in America. That's why there's so many foreign car companies on our domestic market. That would be my argument, is there would be more smaller oil companies and then giant corporation to where if they get sued, it doesn't matter. They have a fund every year for when they get sued, which I agree, that's a problem.
We do know this is the way it used to work, and it didn't work out very well.
What do you mean? No, just because FDR changed everything doesn't mean it was bad before him. Come on, I'm tired of this argument. I'm tired of it. The world kept spinning before FDR was born, okay?
And it fucking sucked.
The New Deal was bullshit. The New Deal was garbage.
Technology too, by the way.
The New Deal actually saved a lot of people's lives.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. It prolonged it.
Okay, it didn't. All right,
it didn't. Read it. Okay. Like, go to read Louis von Mises and Hayek and people like this. Like, it doesn't help to add more regulations to the economy. That was holding them down. They were digging ditches, and the guy behind them was refilling it for a government check that was pennies. They were still starving. It didn't fix anything. You want to talk about the environment? The whole Dust Bowl happened because of freaking crappy regulations on soil and stuff like that.
Actually, it was
better yet. Look into the Depression. They don't call it the Great Depression, but they call it the Depression of 1920. I don't know if you know much about that, but it's interesting to note that there was a depression that by every metric, every economic metric you can possibly find, was just as bad, if not worse, than the Great Depression that we all know about during the 30s and 40s. And the government actually really did have hands off, did nothing, and it was over and done with in less than a year and a half.
Was that Cleveland that was president at that time?
I think so, yeah. Grover. I think.
Yeah, he was one of the most libertarian presidents we ever had. He just vetoed everything. It was like, nope. He didn't
Did you say he was the best president?
I didn't say best. The best was Thomas Jefferson, but he messed up a couple times. But
yeah, well, fuck you.
Yeah, hi, Benny. I'm glad to have you on, sir.
I didn't give him the link, so whoever gave him the link, that's your problem.
I dropped the link in the general chat that in our hangout. It's okay that he's here.
I mean, you know, I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to leave the internet for forever. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not leaving the internet.
Just saying.
All right.
And you stick had to sand out of his
Yeah.
vagina.
Are we done with this argument, or Pirate? Do you want to stick your nose in this one too?
Stick that big fat Jew nose in there.
There you go.
I'm Irish, thank you very much. But
Damn it.
no. I just enjoyed listening to you guys argue. It was quite entertaining. Thank you.
I just like it when I yell at people.
Yes, I do. It's funny. I love seeing you get riled up, Wolf. It's hilarious.
I'm actually not riled. This is just how I am, I think.
Oh,
I told you I'm a cunt.
This one is a short one. All right. Number 2.3, energy and resources. While energy is needed to fuel a modern society, subsidizing any particular form of energy that includes oil, Wolf, we wouldn't be giving these companies a bunch of money. We oppose all government control of energy pricing, allocation, and production.
Of course you do.
My resources.
My resources.
So that is exactly what, that's exactly what we were arguing about. So should we continue the argument or move on?
Look, I don't want to live in a country where there's no regulations for the environment. I mean, or having a renewable resource, because let's face it, oil ain't gonna last forever.
They're talking about deregulating to where people can innovate and create new sources of energy also.
Hold on.
We just wouldn't be giving them subsidies. We won't be paying the solar company that $100 million to go out of business, stuff like that.
Well, I wouldn't be opposed to solar.
Well, no, but they went out of business. We gave them tax money and they ran it into the ground. I'm not opposed to solar either, but maybe they should do it themselves. Innovate, cut costs, make money. It's called capitalism for a reason.
This isn't capitalism. This is bullshit.
Capitalism, that's right.
Solar, it's kind of funny because the environment, or specifically global warming and things of that nature, I don't really worry about it too much, because I honestly don't think, and this might be a little bit off topic, but I don't really worry about it too much, because I think the day will come, and it might be sooner rather than later, that solar energy is just gonna wipe the floor with oil-based energy.
Bye, guys.
Keep going. Pirate drops out. It's okay. Benny will be back too. I'm sure he's a smart ass. He wants to be a little smart ass in the corner.
Yeah, but it's every other day that I read articles coming from the United States, South Korea, a lot of different areas that advance the technology with solar energy. So, people say we need to do away with using oil, and I think that's coming anyway. That's a little off topic, but just a tidbit.
No, I just said that. I think that we need to get off of oil and get on something else.
What about biodiesel? Where there's this one guy turning in freaking French fry grease from McDonald's into gas and running his VW.
You know that ruins a modern diesel engine. You know that.
Well, he had an older VW. Why don't we go back to the older engines then and run it off that?
It would ruin a diesel engine that we know of.
His seems to be doing fine.
Over a period of time.
Okay, but I mean,
there's like no stopping. Like, yes, you can run fatty oil or oil, grease, whatever in the car, in the diesel, but over, I think it's like 8 to 10 years, that engine is not going to work anymore. When we have cars around for 10 years or more.
That could very well be true. I don't know, to be honest. But I would imagine that whatever money you might save from being able to pull up to a Chinese restaurant and take their oil away from them and use it might be substantial. And the reason why I say that is it's actually funny that we're talking about this, because, again, this might be a little off topic. I'm so sorry. But I used to work for this company. We used to do documentaries. Long story short, we followed this group around, and they had that. They had a diesel engine that they converted, and they could use oil. And they went around the entire country, and basically they would just stop at restaurants and be like, hey, where's that oil that you don't want to use anymore? We'll throw it in here. And that's how they gassed up, quotation marks, of course.
So
vehicle.
My oil.
So once we did that, you don't think that that oil wouldn't be as exploited as gas?
Sure, but it's better for the environment, right? Because we're talking about environmental issues now.
Fucking
We
fine.
moved on to the environment.
Yeah, and that it's actually funny also because there was a scene in the same documentary I worked on where the guy was filling up the tank with this stuff and he was like, "Oh man, it smells like egg rolls," and he's like licking his fingers and stuff. A little gross, but I was like, that's interesting.
What hippies did you follow around, dude? And what documentary is this? I gotta watch this shit.
That is exactly what they were, hippies for Jesus, basically. It was called The Ordinary Radicals. I worked on it in like 2008. And we
Can you
followed
find it on YouTube or is it on Amazon or something?
You probably have to buy the DVD off the Amazon. I think there's clips of it on YouTube. But yeah, it was called The Ordinary Radicals. It followed around a group of very, very Christian hippies, I guess you could call them that, who were very against what a lot of mainstream Christians have become. They're all about, we should actually follow what Jesus Christ said and like not hate people and stuff like that. I'm not saying anything bad about them. They were a little nutty, but it was kind of interesting. They were nutty for a lot of other different reasons, but man.
Yeah, don't spoil it all. I want to see that shit. All right. And you got anything to say about the environment, Pirate, before we move on? I didn't know the next bullet point was about the environment, or I would have saved that whole argument.
The environment, yeah, we need to protect it. We definitely need to protect it. We don't need to go burning it down. I need my oceans, okay? Don't go fucking with my Kraken. Kraken will come out of the ocean, fuck you guys up, and tell you to get your shit together. That's what happened to BP. That's why we don't really hear much about British Petroleum now. That's because the Kraken came, took those executives. Yeah, they did get punished. They're drowning, Wolf. They're drowning right now, indefinitely, because they fucked with my ocean.
Yeah, and it might be a little ironic, but a lot of people might find it strange that as a libertarian, if I see somebody throwing garbage on the ground or something, or if I'm just walking by and I see garbage on the ground, I get really upset and pissed off. It doesn't make me happy. I don't rub my hands together and say, yeah, that was a private individual that just fucked over the environment. Let's have more of that.
What has Mother Nature ever done for me?
Exactly. I can't profit off of a clean field.
So what's the next point, Mad Dodge? What's the next point?
My roads.
I'm sorry. The kids outside were being rowdy. I had to go beat Dad for a minute.
They were
all right
on your private property.
Hey, damn it! I'm trying to stream. You kids, shut the fuck up.
That's pretty much. I tried to edit myself a little bit better. I said hush instead of fuck. Or you hush up, not you shut the fuck up. But all right, government finances spending. How to keep the fruits of their labor, Wolf. We call for the repeal of the income tax, Wolf. The establishment of the International Revenue Service
Blah, blah.
and all federal programs and services not required under the United States Constitution.
Oh, yeah.
We oppose any legal requirements forcing employers to serve as tax collectors. Governments should not incur debt, which burdens future generations without their consent. We support the passage of a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution, provided that the budget is balanced exclusively by cutting expenditures and not raising taxes. Wow, there's a bunch there, and I'm going to let Wolf just freak out on me for about 4 minutes, and then we can go to Libertarian rants.
What am I going to freak out on you about? I think it looks good on paper. It's like Pirate said earlier. It looks great on paper. But, I mean, that's all I'm really going to say about it.
That can be easily exploited by greed.
Yeah.
greed can just like fuck that idea all sorts of up.
Yeah, I don't think that takes into account human nature at all.
If I was to write that myself, I would add in that for the actual taxes that we need to collect, you already know this from me, but I'm going to say it for Libertarian Rants. He hasn't heard it yet. But I want a modest tariff, maybe 10% on the ports, on all goods going in and out. So the private businesses exporting goods would pay the tariff, and the companies from foreign ports pay the tariff. So that's about 20% tax level coming off of imports alone. And other than that, we could have a modest property tax, I suppose. No, why not? And that's it. That's pretty much what we ran the government off of before the income tax, and we could do it again. Now, you've heard that before, but Libertarian Rants, what do you think about that? Would you be okay with a modest tariff and a modest property tax?
Well, I guess instead of that, we were talking about Gary Johnson and how much of frankly, a weak candidate he was.
He's a
but
winner.
It wasn't Ron Paul, it was somebody else who mentioned a consumption tax, which I thought was okay. And the number was 1% to 2% consumption tax. Every single solitary thing that is sold in the country, you add 1% to it, and that goes to the government. That's a taxation, and that can replace the gigantic tax code that we have that's so labyrinthian that nobody understands it, even the people who write it. And the revenue that would go into the government should be more than enough to run what they need to do. Which, again, I'm not an anarcho-capitalist. I don't say that they shouldn't be running anything, but a 1% to 2% consumption tax on all goods sold, I think, would do the trick.
That could work. I could be okay with that. No tariff?
Now, I wouldn't be fond of a tariff, especially at 10%, because that would just make prices shoot up quite a bit. Whereas with a 1% to 2% consumption tax, I'll go easy on myself. Let's say 1%. You buy something that's $1, it's $1.01. You buy something that's $1,000, it's $1,010.
Okay.
And without
so it's pretty
tariff,
much a modified flat tax, and it's super low.
Yeah, and it has to do with absolutely everything that's sold. So I said a stick of gum before, that's $1. I mean, that you have to take accounting for that. And the other thing, or you have to take that into account rather. So there are millions of things, quite literally, that we wouldn't even think of that the government would get some revenue from, and it would not be nearly as jarring as every April or May that comes along where we say, shit, I don't have the $5,000 or $6,000 that I have to pay to the government. This is more of, hey, I'm going to go out and buy something that's 10 grand. I know it's going to be 10 grand, $100 at the end of it. The other thing is tariffs. I'm not a big fan of, is just because then you run the risk of having trade wars and tariff wars, and then they're going to raise it. And does that mean that you raise it? And maybe the politicians you don't have in office right now will raise it, but maybe later on somebody will get elected on the screw that country platform. They put a 15% tariff on them, and we only have a 10% tariff on their goods. Let's raise it. I mean, I think the consumption tax would just be simpler and a little bit less political.
If you did the tariff, though, as an amendment, and you said it has to stay at 10%, fuck inflation, fuck all that, it's just a flat 10% of whatever goes or comes in.
Okay. I mean, I can give you that's better, certainly. I guess in my own utopia in my head, which is just BS, to be honest, my own utopia in my head, I would still prefer just the consumption tax. But what your little addendum there is certainly better. Sure.
Yeah, because you would have to do a constitutional amendment to get rid of the income tax anyway. So That's what you would replace it with, a new amendment.
Yeah, that's certainly true. So maybe my amendment, instead of saying we're going to get rid of the income tax and add tariffs, I'd just say we're getting rid of the income tax and 1 to 2% sales tax, federal sales tax, period. That's it. All other federal taxes can go down the drain since they waste so much of our fucking money anyway.
We would never get the blue states to agree to that, though. And
okay, so what programs are we cutting and how? That's what I want to fucking know.
What do you mean how? Well, first, whatever ones the president can cut just initially. So, like the drug laws, he could schedule everything to 0 and that immediately. I think the Department of Education was created by Jimmy Carter. I think the president could write that out immediately.
Yeah, but no president that's not fucking retarded would do that.
Ronald Reagan wanted to do that.
Yeah, but did he do it? No.
He didn't have the political power at that time because the Iran-Contra affair.
Thank God.
I'm just saying he didn't have the political backing at that time. He was dealing with shit.
No, I'm asking, what programs do you want to cut and how?
Well, I said a few. Libertarian rants, you got a few?
Yeah. As to how to cut them, well, that's a long freaking story. There's got to be a lot of people who have their minds changed. But what programs to cut, what you had mentioned earlier, I think is fantastic. The war on drugs, that's a huge chunk of change you just get rid of immediately. Department of Education that offers absolutely horrific education to children. You give me 30 kids and a computer, I could teach your kids better with Khan Academy in 10 minutes than a week at school. And with Common Core, I mean, don't even get me freaking started on the ridiculous nature of that sham. Let's see here. Off the top of my head, the other thing is the endless amount of wars that we go into. Not necessarily a program.
The Department of Education was made by Nixon, P.S.
That's fine. I'm honestly asking, are you saying that because I should feel better about it because it was created by a Republican?
No, I don't. I honestly don't give a shit. But keep going.
Oh, okay. Yeah. If it was created by Nixon, that's fine. I wouldn't have voted for Nixon.
I'm not saying you would. Mad Dog said Carter, and it was actually Nixon.
Oh, okay. Oh.
That's what I was referring to.
Oh, got it. Okay. The other thing is the endless amounts of wars that we engage in, and not just wars. Whatever the number was, 300 and some odd bases that we have in South Korea and Japan and Australia, and you name the country, we've got a base there. That costs an ungodly amount of money. So between those things, three things in and of themselves, you would be taking a big chunk out of the amount that we, as in the federal government, is paying. Because I know the libertarian thing would be to say, oh yeah, cut the war on poverty. And not that I'm against that, but the amount of money that we pay, the percentage wise in that is quite dwarfed by the three things that I had mentioned.
Since he paused there, I don't want any dead air. Wolfshot, is there any programs you would actually cut or not?
No, I would just allocate the money better.
Not even the NSA?
Okay. I don't like the NSA. I don't think anyone on here likes the NSA. Period.
I hope they're listening right now, by the way.
So that we can agree to cut that, right? We can at least find one program that would save billions.
Yeah, we just have to repeal the act. Good luck. Because those same state politicians don't give a fuck.
Yeah, good luck. Saying good luck sarcastically actually proves a lot of my points. Yeah, good luck changing government and getting it into something better.
Okay, well, I mean, I feel that I have more of a chance doing that than what you're proposing.
Well, private businesses come and go just with the wind. That's called the market change. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing. It makes life
wonderful. It is better. So good.
No, it truly is. We take it for granted. Okay, our lives are amazing. more so than we could have ever probably dreamed of 20, 30 years ago.
I wrote it in the chat. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you would like the NSA MC, you bastard. I just had to address that like vocally. You would like the NSA. I should have known. Do you work for them? Conversations, don't you? All right. I'm just messing with MC in the chat. Sorry. Go ahead, sir. My bad.
That's quite all right. I forgot what I was saying.
I hate it when that happens. Should we move on to the next bullet point?
Sure.
Government employees. We favor repealing any requirement that one must join or pay dues to a union as a condition of government employment. We advocate replacing defined benefit pensions with defined contribution plans, as they are commonly offered in the private sector, so as not to impose debt on future generations without their consent. It's time for a little union talk. How do you guys feel about unions?
I feel that a lot of unions are very corrupt. Very much so. They're only in it for themselves. They're not in it to actually make that particular workplace better for the employees, which is what a union is supposed to be doing by a trade of what they claim. You know, they come forth and they say, well, we're going to make sure that your bosses can't do this, that, and the other to you. And then, you know, they end up charging you like out the ass for union fees. It happens all the time. You know, I think right now the railroad suffers from a lot of terrible unions.
Yeah, actually, the railroad is a good one because there's not very many people going into that to be conductors or anything anymore, and it's kind of the older generation still doing those jobs, right? Or am I wrong on that? I'm sure MC will correct me if I'm wrong.
There are people that go in. Its intake has definitely decreased. But I personally have a cousin who, you know, as soon as he turned 18, he jumped into the railway. That's what he did. He started laying track, then he became a conductor, or I think he's a conductor now, actually. But he started off by laying track. He started at like the bottom of the totem fucking pole, okay?
Yeah, I almost got a job laying track, but something came up, so I couldn't do it. But I haven't heard of very many people that are like, hey, I'm going to go work on the trains. It seems like the older generation, and like a lot of times I was a stupid stoner, so I'm out in the woods by the railroad tracks, and the guy driving the train is an old man, like most times than not. So I don't know. That's where I kind of took that idea from.
Well, also the engineers, that is a title that is vastly based off of seniority. Now, they have to have a level of training. They have to have a level of I think they even have to have a level of schooling nowadays. But they have to have also been within the company for a while, because all engineers start off as conductors. Unless you are leaving the current company to go to a different company as an engineer, yeah, you're going in as a conductor.
Huh. Thanks for the little Railroad 101 there, man.
Yeah, just some base knowledge because of family members that have been in the railway before.
But I also don't want government employees, the few that we do require at the end of my libertarian dream, I don't want them to have to be in a union. I don't think that should be mandated, not even for a private company. Because to go into like a lumber yard and stuff like that, they eventually make you join the union after you're doing your temp, 90 days. I don't like the idea of forced unions. If you want to create one, good for you. I don't like the idea of forcing one upon somebody.
Well,
yeah.
No, go ahead. You go ahead, Libby.
I was before you even said that, Mad Dodge. Before you even said that, I was thinking the exact same thing. I have no issue whatsoever if there's a group of employees who are sick of their employer and they do something about it. They pool their resources and buy them out. They threaten to quit. They want to go on strike, whatever, especially if they know that the employee can't handle that. I have no problem with people voluntarily doing something like that to get something that they want. But it has to do with, we started with unions and now it's gotten to a point where employees are paralyzed in so many different ways because you have so much government force, and now there's men with guns in the room because of unions. And I think it's just gone absolutely way too far. One other thing I want to say, and again, I'll admit right off the bat that this is an anecdotal, but I have one experience with unions. Well, I have several, but this was the most shocking to me. When I was a bit younger and I worked for a private company that dealt in furniture and furnishing businesses, we had this one job where we showed up in the morning. Long story short, there was a huge rat outside the place, and all these union workers, they had electricians and carpenters, etc., were protesting the business that I worked for. It was a small furniture business. And I just remember thinking, my God, that has got to be the biggest waste of time and energy and manpower I've ever seen. These people who hired us and hired the electricians and the unionized carpenters want a service to be performed, and they're going to pay them for that. And it's just ridiculous that they would enter into that agreement and then waste a bunch of time bringing out a big blow up doll of a rat and protest us for being there because we were private, non-unionized. And they were saying this is a union-only job site. And it was a little experience I had with unions when I was a younger. And again, it is anecdotal, I'll admit that, but it always just left a bad taste in my mouth. I said, my God, if one of the first and few experiences I had with unions was just this, how much time is wasted across the entire country with this kind of nonsense, this childish, ridiculous, immature, sophomoric nonsense?
Well, you see what you proposed earlier, the employees getting together, creating their own union, you know, their way, and not forcing it upon others, but just unionizing against that way they can stand up to the company when they need to. Well, I think something like that personally could stand to happen in, you know, say like Walmart. I think Walmart could definitely use something like that going down in their company because they treat their employees like shit. So there are cases where, you know, a union could be a good thing, and then there's also cases where a union is a fucking bad thing. And I think it's just a case by case scenario in this one. So.
Oh, I think MC got it wrong. I think I was right on the Department of Education thing, it looks like, in the chat. I missed what he said a minute ago, but he said he's going to pout for a bit because he got the EPA creation confused with the Department of Education. So score one for me. That's about time.
Good job. I'm proud of you.
A broken watch is right twice a day.
You know, I'm proud to be a broken watch tonight. All right. So, do you have anything you got to say about unions? What about the police union, Wolf? Did you enjoy that union, or do you not want to touch that?
It served its purpose.
Yeah. That's all you want to say about it. Then we will move on. That is fine.
Wait,
there is
an argument against it.
Oh, you're against
what now?
it?
You don't have an argument against that, Mad? You don't have anything to say about it?
My argument was that... Oh my gosh, Bradley. My argument was at the very beginning, I said I believe people have the right to form unions. I don't want them forced down people's throats. And that's pretty much my stance on unions.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
And before we go on to the next point, we were on government employees, correct?
Yeah, they did mention government employees in there. That's right. I forgot to hit that part. I focused on the unions. So go ahead and expand upon that.
I just wanted to say it's funny because there was a point in time in which the amount of public sector unemployment job rate went down. And it was when Obama was president, and he and many other politicians of his ilk were going on about, hey, look at the public sector unemployment going down. Isn't that great? And the thing they don't tell you is the people who are getting employed by the government that's making that rate go down is generally surveyors and people who do nonsense jobs and provide absolutely no value whatsoever to society.
I am absolutely no value to society.
I don't know a thing about you, so I don't know if that's true or not. But what I do know is that the jobs that they were touting did actually add no value to society.
Well, I think surveying serves a purpose, but that's just because I want the federal land divvied up into parcels and homesteaded. But that's a different argument.
Yeah, I mean, I use that as an example, but the list could be endless of things that the government employs people to do. And you can kind of tell that they're employing people to do these things for the sake of employing them. There's a reason why in
Oh
a
my
private
God, those
market,
cunts.
yeah, exactly. There's a reason why in a private market, those people would never be hired to do that, because it doesn't actually do anything for anyone. And it's certainly nothing that any sort of a market would call out for.
It probably doesn't do anything for you. That might be the problem.
Yeah, no, not that at all, actually. Nobody benefits from it. Nobody's saying, thank God the government hired that person to do a nonsense job, to dig a hole, put the dirt over there, and then put it back in the hole.
Is that what? Oh, okay. Is that what they were doing? Are you sure?
The shovel-ready jobs were kind of that, or people that they like painted new lines on the roads, and the lines were hardly faded to begin with.
Oh, those cunts.
Yeah, and
well, that shit's like a lot of money. They're getting $30 an hour to drive that
Thanks,
thing.
Obama.
And I know it's not the United States. It was Panama when they were creating the Panama Canal. There was somebody who went down while they were constructing the Panama Canal, and the government of Panama had the people using shovels to dig the canal. And somebody asked, well, why aren't you using a tractor? It's like, well, that would eliminate a lot of the jobs. We have, we can create more jobs if we have people, using shovels instead of big machinery. He said, well, why not give them all spoons? Okay.
Well, in Panama, though, that is a different situation where that actually did help the local populace. But we're talking bureaucrats in the U.S. We're talking people that give out the mail when really that could be one person, but they hire 10. We're talking about those type of useless jobs here in the States. But in Panama and foreign countries, there is some value to giving the local populace a leg up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of why I had that addendum and saying that I know it's not the United States. I mean, it was such a shit show of a country to a large extent. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Venezuela should be cutting down some forests or something and paying people. Like, they need to do something. They're eating each other down there. And there's no reason for it. Like, they could get help from Brazil if they asked. I don't know.
Yeah, one of the richest countries in terms of natural resources is laid to absolute waste. And, we all know why that is.
Well, it's socialism. That's a whole separate stream. So, but
yeah, I didn't want to get into it too much. I know that's a whole different topic, but
I think hiring 10 people to do the job of one is stupid, and that's what they were doing. That's what we were arguing. Not that there is no room for police, not that there's no room for some of these government jobs. I grant that there is, but 10 people to deliver the mail in like a one-story building, that's fucking dumb.
That doesn't happen. I don't believe.
I would disagree. I don't have direct proof. I don't have a link for you, so I'll give up that point. I concede it, but I do still disagree.
Okay, that's great. I mean, fuck them, right?
Well, kinda. Yeah.
That's where I get my point. If it ain't about you.
No, don't fuck them. Have them do something that's actually skill based, where they can actually develop more skills and maybe perhaps get even a better job later on. I don't take any joy in seeing somebody lose a job, but you do have to think about how are we really going to prosper rather than just survive. And that's a whole nother conversation that would last quite some time.
Yeah, let's move on. I think we've gone up over an hour already. So, money in financial markets. We favor free market banking with unrestricted competition among banks and depository institutions of all types. Markets are not actually free unless fraud is vigorously combated. See, there's the counterfeiting thing. They wouldn't be doing it. It'd be combated. Those who enjoy the possibility of profits must not impose risks or losses upon others, such as through government guarantees or bailouts. Individuals engaged in voluntary exchange should be free to use money as any mutual agreeable commodity or item. Wow, that was a mouthful. We support a halt to inflammatory monetary policies and unconstitutional legal tender laws. The Fed is what that pretty much says at the end. But the rest, they are talking about combating fraud and stuff like that, Pirate. I believe that was your point you made about counterfeit money. So what's your response to their part of that platform?
Well, I kind of dropped out there, so I didn't hear a good portion of that.
Oh, well, they believe in vigorously combating fraud. So persecuting people that counterfeit and give fraudulent loans, Ponzi schemes, shit like that.
Okay, well, I would like to know their methods. That's what I would begin to question there is how are you going to combat this? You know, with what libertarians propose, simply saying we will vigorously, persecute and combat this. Well, persecution is only one step of the process of combating counterfeit. Counterfeit is you've got to figure out who's doing it first of all. How? Let me know your process. Because you guys talk about privatized, police forces, privatized all of that shit. So who's going to be the detective on the case? Where's he going to come from?
Well, this was the 26. Wait, sorry, gosh darn it. But this was the 2016 platform, all right? It wasn't, the end game is not what we're talking about. So the government would be the ones enforcing the laws on counterfeit money. They're saying end the Federal Reserve and give it back to Congress, pretty much, I believe. Or would you disagree with that, Libertarian Rants? I need to mute because of these kids.
I'm sorry, what was the question? Say it again. I'm sorry.
All right. So pretty much the libertarian stance would be end the Fed, give the power back to Congress, and let the government enforce the currency laws because that's a federal power.
Because Congress isn't the Fed or anything.
But
wait. Well, you do know the Federal Reserve is a private organization, right?
No,
That's a private bank.
I'm just saying that you guys talk about state a fuck of a lot, and it's still a part of the government.
But Mad, there's still a big avoiding thing. Something that's being avoided there is how are they going to enforce it? That Congress is nothing but a fucking bunch of fucking stiffs in suits. So what are you going to hand them guns and say go find these assholes?
No, Congress's job is to pass laws to enforce it. I want a lot of laws off the books, but there is
just because there's a fucking law doesn't mean it ain't gonna be broken, as your point was earlier.
Nobody is saying yet to have a private police force. So your public police would enforce the laws as they do now.
Private police.
Okay, so let's work in the hypo.
That because that's not what we're talking about here.
All right, but I would like to know I would like to know your answer in the hypothetical situation that police forces have been privatized, because this is something that you do advocate for. I want to know personally. I think it would be like interesting to find out what you have to say.
Oh, okay. In the libertarian fucking utopia, the person who got ripped off would hire a private enforcers to find them. They would be arrested, and the very local government that we live in would try them with due process.
That sounds like Nazi fucking Germany.
Wait, due process and a trial by jury sounds like Nazi Germany? Nazi
And
Germany
how is
was
that
enforced
person?
by a socialist
No,
state.
your brown shirts that you hired, that sounds like Nazi fucking Germany.
That sounds like the normal police. You paid them through taxes. You hired them. You know that, right?
There would
Like,
also
you pay for them.
There would also be a market involved in this. So to compare it to Nazi Germany, I think is slightly off base, as that was the furthest thing from a market-oriented private
Yeah, but
law.
you can't see how a private police force would, be a problem.
I think the public police force is a problem. But if there was problems, then nobody would hire them. If they break the law,
I know. It's all the cops.
Them.
I know. It's all the public. It's the public funding that's hurting the cops. I forgot.
What?
Well, no,
is it not?
No, no, it isn't.
What he just said was pretty good on that. Nobody would hire them if they were going around doing crazy things. That's a lot more.
Are you sure about that?
That's a lot more than you can say for the current situation in which we have. Which, by the way, a police force run by the government, yeah, that's certainly one area.
So only those willing to pay get law enforcement, just like only those willing to pay for health insurance get the care needed, correct?
But once again, we keep coming back to this, but you would have more money.
Answer me. No, answer the fucking question, seriously.
The answer is yes. And if you don't have the money, you have no income taxes on you. You would have, like...
That is so fucked.
Arguments that don't even matter because it won't happen.
No, it does fucking matter. It does matter.
What we're talking about today is the 2016 platform and what they would do within the current structure, because that's what we have.
It's just I'm pointing out the flaws in your argument for a private police force. So only those with money can have the police or have protection. That's bullshit.
No, wait. Hold on. Because here's the thing, Mad Dodge, is you talking about your utopian is some form of derived capitalism, right? It is still a capitalistic fucking government that you're speaking of.
And so criminals are safe targeting the poor, as MC would say.
So in any form of capitalism,
the poor would be a lot smaller. And the poor could band together and protect themselves and make their own communities. And then
you really are living in a fucking utopia, aren't you?
No, this is all stupid fantasy that you made me get into on a stream.
This isn't stupid fantasy. You believe in it. Stand up for your beliefs.
Wait, can I actually? I want to say something.
I bet you do.
Yeah, I definitely do, because you keep saying the word utopia, contrary to popular belief or contrary to your belief. Libertarians don't.
No, it's popular belief. It ain't just mine.
Well, that's too bad, because that just goes to show that popular belief doesn't really know what it's talking about.
Oh no, I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I'm not saying you, but in this situation.
No, go for it.
So the fact of the matter is that libertarians don't actually promise utopia. You hear a lot more utopia promising from those who advocate for government. They're the ones who say or allude to, hey, if we have our way with a big government, things are just going to look amazing and there's not going to be a problem. Libertarians,
I don't believe I ever fucking said that.
Not say that if you let us have our way, it's going to be a panacea for all ills in society. That's not what we say. We say it's going to be better than if you have a top-down system.
But like MC said, criminals would be targeting the poor because there would be no money. If someone didn't have any money to pay for a private police force to defend them, then they're fucked. This sounds like The Purge. Legit.
No, the poor. No. Okay, so we also believe in firearms for everybody. Wouldn't they be armed? Couldn't they protect themselves?
What if they couldn't afford a gun?
A gun would be dirt cheap if everybody can make them and sell them.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
This is all fucking.
economics.
This is all predicated on something that
demand.
could not happen because of human nature.
This is all predicated upon the invisible hand, economics.
No, this is all predicated on something that could never happen because of human greed.
Okay, some people would be criminals. We would handle them. We handle them now in higher numbers.
I don't know, maybe it's because I was a cop and I'm a, you know, whatever, a shill, whatever you want to fucking say over there.
I've never called you a shill before in any conversation we've ever had. Let's not get personal. I was trying to talk about current events and not some end game, because the end game isn't the battle. The battle is moving the scale closer to liberty.
Yeah, but oh God, I Jesus Christ. What if I don't want to move that scale to whatever the fuck it is you're proposing?
Well, then maybe that's why you're here, to argue your points, and I haven't personally attacked you once.
I'm not personally attacking you. Do you want me to personally attack you? Because I can. I'm pretty good at that.
Whoa. No, don't personally attack.
No, he wants to know what a personal attack is. I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking your illogical fallacy is what I'm attacking. Especially about a private police force. That's what I'm attacking.
And that's not even what we were talking about. Can we move on, please?
Move on.
We can.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to know what you thought. That was all. That was really all.
All right.
Thought about I don't even remember what the hell we got so off topic.
Right. No, did we even cover it? Fuck. Now I'm gonna have to rewatch this, but whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Was we're straying and going into and I don't want to. I want to stick on what we're talking about, please. And that is, as the host, my request at this point.
Okay, so we were on money and financial markets. So I'm reading this, and a lot of this has to do with something that we should do to the Federal Reserve, which is, of course, end the thing for a whole host of different reasons. Trying to read through this thing. Legalizing currency. Yeah, you should be able to use and trade whatever you want. Currency is just
I want to hit that. Yeah, I want to hit that. What do you think about trading precious metals or bitcoins?
Yeah.
You're all for that? And Wolf, to break the ice again, since it got a little heated, are you for trading other currencies like Bitcoin?
Bitcoin, no.
Well, it is legal right now.
Yeah, that's great.
So I don't have any Bitcoins. I don't use them, but my thing is less about the currency that somebody wants to trade and a lot more to do about people should be able to do what they want if it doesn't harm another human being. If you want to take a feather and trade that, I don't know who you're going to find to trade it with you, but it's your right to trade it for some other.
We kind of do that. We kind of do that with like pawn shops. You know what I mean? We take our valuables in, we trade them for currency. So there already is a precedent to do this.
Yeah, and it's perfectly legitimate. And anybody who says that they shouldn't be allowed to do that, I would have to question their morality a little bit. Who is anybody to tell someone that they can't bring a product into a place and leave with another product?
I'm immoral.
Win-win.
I have no morality.
That's okay. Just don't vote for politicians to impose immorality on me. That's all.
No, there are plenty of politicians doing that all on their own.
That's very true.
Is that the truth? All right. So did you want to finish that paragraph, or do you want to move on to the next subsection?
Well, I mean, we could talk about the Federal Reserve, but we might be here for a long freaking time.
Well, and we've already kind of hit upon it multiple times, just talking about libertarian stuff. It always goes to Federal Reserve.
Yeah. Which is
natural. So I don't even know if I need to read every word of this, but I will. Education is best provided by the free market, achieving greater equality, accountability, and efficiency, with more diversity of choice, recognizing that the education of children is a parental responsibility. We would restore authority to parents to determine the education of their children from government. Parents should have control and of and responsibility for all funds for their children's education. So privatize the schools.
I guess I'll say something about it. And this is kind of one of those odd ones where privatizing schools maybe in the long run is great, but it's one of those things you absolutely could not do it right away. I mean, that would be catastrophic mayhem. Same for the Federal Reserve. Not that I'm going back to the Federal Reserve, but you wouldn't be able to just end the Federal Reserve overnight. There would be a lot of mayhem that would happen. It would have to be through some sort of attrition. But I kind of hit on this point a little bit earlier about education. Education's the dissemination of information to a person. I don't see the need for an absolutely gigantic government institution to provide that for people. I used a kind of a crude example before. You give me Khan Academy and some uneducated kids. I could probably do a better job than a lot of teachers that I know personally in teaching children. So, and it always just reminds, my last thing I'll say, it always just reminds me of, I think, who was it? I forget who said it, but basically, like, when the libertarian or the person who's speaking out against the government says that they don't want the government to do something, it's not that we don't want anyone at all to do it. It's just that we feel that there are much more efficient and better ways to get it done than by government decrees and government laws.
Well, as soon as I unmute, the quiet child yells, of course. I support charter schools, private schools, Catholic schools, for all I care. I'm an atheist, but I don't care. Military schools are okay, so that would be kind of a, you could make that a public school. Have like ROTC and all that other stuff publicly funded. That way we could keep a strong militia. But I would like to end the Department of Education, like I said, and kick it down to the states. I know that's always my argument, but that's the 10th Amendment screaming at me. And that's how I would handle the schools.
Yeah, and I think it's always good to be pragmatic. What I mean by that is, you can
Thank God.
You can be for the ending. You could be for ending the Department of Education, but like I said before, there's no way you'd be able to just do it overnight, flick a switch. It would just be catastrophic.
Well, you could end the Department of Education pretty close to overnight.
Yeah, can't the president write a presidential order?
Nope, because the Department of Education was put in place by Congress. You're going to need Congress to remove it.
Well, I'll get Rand Paul the second bill.
Well, wait, I don't mean you couldn't do it. I'm saying it probably wouldn't be a wise decision to end it overnight. I liken everything that the government does to drug addicts. Would it be best for a heroin addict to get off of drugs? Sure. But would you want to do it cold turkey? You could, but there might be a better way to wean them off of it.
The problem,
that's what I was
The
getting
government
at.
is like heroin now.
the problem, yes, exactly. If you're gonna have the government do it and you try and do it off of the slow method, all you're doing is giving Congress another way to create more bureaucracy, all right, to deal with it. And that's not how you fix things. If you're going to cut government, you have to cut it. Yes, it is pulling the Band-Aid off. Yes, it's going to be painful. But if you're really serious, those are the things that you have to do, because you have to force the states to re-accept the responsibility that should have been theirs to begin with. It was their advocacy of their rights that has caused a lot of the havoc that you're seeing today, because they ceded it to the federal government.
Yeah, that's why I don't see a difference between the federal government or the state, because there really isn't one anymore.
Well, there should be, though, is my contention.
To be fair, I think you misunderstood the where I'm coming from. I'm talking a bit theoretical here, but the fact of the matter is would you not be able to admit that there would be a better way if what you said, and I don't deny what you said is true, that if you do slowly do it, there's going to be a lot of avenues that open up for politicians to take advantage of. But is it not possible, theoretically, perhaps, to that it would be better to slowly wind it down so people can make plans and preparations for their children rather than say, hey, tomorrow your kids aren't coming into public school?
Hey,
That the fact that public schools exist, it would not be affected. There would still be quote unquote public schools. They just wouldn't be federally funded.
I have a question though. How long would you slowly remove the Band-Aid? Are you talking 4 years, 8, 12?
I haven't put much thought into it. I wouldn't know. Probably
Well,
a lot.
Well, because my
years.
question, the only reason I ask is because the longer you wait, the more likely a new Congress will come in and undo everything.
Yeah, that's
But you're
why
going to have a new Congress in 2 years anyway.
I don't have a specific answer.
Well, MC, a lot of people,
certainly less than 12 years. Certainly less.
Well, MC, a lot of people get reelected. Like Rand Paul's been in there for what, 8 years now? So I mean, if you're doing it in like 4 years, then maybe a slower
the problem with that is when you start talking about funding, all right, you have to deal with the fact that previous Congresses can't hold a current Congress, right? They can't limit a current Congress. So there's no way every 2 years, and that's assuming that everything happens immediately, the day one. Most likely, it's going to happen probably within a year. So within a year, you're going to end up with a new Congress that you have no idea what the control of that Congress is going to be like, and that Congress is not held or not bound, all right, to any decision that was made by previous Congresses. They can decide to refund everything. They can decide to reallocate funds. All right, they can go back into debt spending. So if you're going to fix something like this, if you're going to go into the idea that you're going to cut programs, and God knows there's a lot of programs that I would like to see cut, you're going to have to figure out a way to cut it either immediately and pull the Band-Aid off, or the only other solution that you're going to have to go with is a convention of states.
You can't write into a bill a hard line that says it will be end.
Nope, because it has no standing if the incoming Congress decides they're going to change it.
Wait a minute. Patriot Act had a sunset, and they renewed it every time. So
yeah.
You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
As to what you said, I have a response to that. Because we're talking about theoretical things and the federal government is not anywhere close to getting rid of the Department of Education, we're talking theoretical here. If the national discourse got to a point where we really, truly, sincerely considering cutting the Department of Education, then I think we would agree that we'd be at a good point in time.
Historically, have you ever seen the federal government shrink?
Hold on, let me finish my point because I'm trying to address what you said. If we got to a point where that was the national discourse, then the probability that the problem that you supposed would happen would be far less. Meaning that if we got to a national place where the entirety of the country was really honestly and earnestly having that conversation of let's get rid of the federal Department of Education, then I don't think backtracking would be a huge concern.
Okay, so how do you foresee that happening? All right, considering the power of Congress, all right, to control the kind of massive amounts of budget that they have.
Well, you're speaking in Congress today. I'm talking about in the future. If we elected a Congress, if let's say there was a huge libertarian wave that went across the country, which would be a great thing, and we elected a Congress, and they said, "Okay,
it would be fucking fabulous, guys."
How are you going to convince the people, especially the 50% of the country that is hardcore leftist, all right, that voted for Hillary Clinton, that they're wrong?
Totally different conversation.
No, it's the same conversation because you're going to have to deal with reality.
No, I'm talking.
Yeah, this sidestepping is really annoying.
You know, I mean, you got to take a look at what history is like, and historically, you won't see it.
Absolutely not. It is a different conversation. I am talking about a theoretical position this country would be in with a lot of libertarians in Congress because there was a shift in the zeitgeist, if you will.
Okay, and politics, just to let you know, is the art of the possible. What you're advocating isn't possible. It's a utopian vision of if this could happen. But the way politics works, the way the country works, the way history has shown, right, is humanity doesn't work that way.
No, you are correct. I am saying if this could happen, and then you respond and you say to me, well, with the Hillary Clintons and the Bernie Sanders around, how are you going to get it done? And I'm saying you're missing the point. Do you understand?
Well, wait.
Look, the problem is that what you're advocating is a position that is utopian. You know it can't happen, so why even focus on it?
Well, we were talking about the Libertarian platform, and we were talking about, hey, is it a good idea to get rid of the Department of Education? That question,
I'm all for that. Okay, yeah. Believe it or not, I'm all for reducing the size of the federal government. But now let's talk about how you can go about doing it realistically.
Oh, I got an idea here. This is why I've been trying to.
Hold on,
This is why I've been trying to.
We were not talking about if you had the power, how could you do it realistically? You came in and then you responded to something that I said about, well, how are you going to?
Right, but I talking about ideological purity to me, all right, when we're trying to get things solved, when we have problems that need to be solved, I mean, yeah, we can all talk about our utopian fantasies of what we'd like to see, what would be nice to see in a visionary type of role, but what we should be focusing on is what can be realistically accomplished.
Well, that was the conversation we were having, whether or not you want to have that conversation. But then you.
Well, no, I just want to.
In a way,
I just want to interject real quick.
Conversation we were having.
Okay.
I just want to interject. MC, isn't ending the Department of Education a part of the Republican platform and has been since the Reagan years? So isn't there a plausible way that we could actually do this if the Libertarian wave did happen, kind of like the Tea Party wave did? Isn't there a middle ground that the two groups can make with Republicans to actually get this through?
So
let's go back. Let's
take a look,
back it back
take a
to
look
reality.
At what's happening. Hold on. Take a look what's happening right now. All right, you're seeing a major fracturing within the Republican Party. You're seeing a start of a fracturing of the Democrat Party. Okay, and there's several reasons for it on both sides. Although the reasons for the Democrat crack up and the Republican crack up are completely different. All right, in order for a libertarian wave to take hold, number one, it would have to come back with concise plans. All right, to take away the people from both parties simultaneously. Okay, that would be number one. Number two, in order to establish that kind of an outlook, you have to sit up there and win elections locally. The Libertarian Party has been around for decades. How many local?
Yes. Yeah.
How many local wins do you have?
There is a few, and I think Austin Peterson and the Senate run, he did switch parties, which I hate. But I think that's going to go a long ways. But Libertarian Rants wanted to talk, and I'm not trying. He is the guest. I'm trying to promote his channel a little bit. So I'm going to let him talk. But I do believe that we could reach across the aisle and make this happen. We don't have to wait for the end game to end the Department of Education.
I think you're ignoring the country as it currently exists when you say you can reach across the aisle right now. It should be obvious to everyone
there is that one issue, though. That's a plank in the Republican Party, and it's a plank in the Libertarian Party.
Okay, so at this point in time, you have the ability. The problem is now is because the Republican Party is so much larger that even if it's a plank in the Libertarian Party, you can't use that to steal votes away from the Republicans.
I'm talking about if there was a wave like the Tea Party and the Libertarians were sitting in Congress as well, they could reach across the aisle and make something happen. Now, Libertarian Rants, you keep unmuting, you go ahead for a minute or two, and then I'll let MC respond since you two are having a good debate. And Libertarian Rants, MC is cool, dude. He does this to me all the time. Don't get heated, man. He's chill as fuck. Go ahead, you guys.
No, I mean, I'm listening to, the name is MC, correct? I'm listening to what he's saying, and I think that's his name. Yeah. And I mean, I agree with a lot of the things he said. I think maybe we got off the wrong foot because he entered the room in the middle of me speaking, I would imagine. And the context of the conversation wasn't there at the time. But I would agree with what he just said. You know, it's way easier said than done for libertarians at this point to reach across the aisle. It's a mile away right now. It just is. I mean, you have people who, you've got how many tens of millions of people who thought Hillary Clinton would make a decent president, and you've got how many millions of people who think Donald Trump would have been a great president and will be a great president. It's going to be tough. And the one thing that's kind of positive for me is the fact that we have been seeing a large increase of libertarian thinking type of people. But the problem is it has to happen way quicker. As to how you do that on a national scale, I'm not so arrogant to sit here and say, oh, this is exactly how you do it. I frankly don't know. Actually, to go back to the very first thing we talked about, which was my YouTube channel, that was one thing I wanted to do, get a message out. And maybe, even though I do it and a lot of libertarians listen to it and they like it, and that's great, one thing that I really wanted to do is I want the Bernie Sanders supporters to listen to it and perhaps maybe have an open mind and think, hey, maybe he's making some sense. That would be a hope, but that's a small pinprick, right? That's a drop in the bucket in an ocean. It's going to be one hell of an uphill battle for quite some time for libertarians to make a serious, solid, lasting dent in this country. I hope I'm proved wrong. I hope I'm proved wrong someday, but that's how it seems at this point.
The only hope that we have, as far as I'm concerned, for reducing the size and the scope of the federal government because of how it has so warped the federal structure. And this includes the judicial department, the judiciary. The only hope that you have to readdress that would be a convention of states. And that's one thing the Libertarian Party could do. The Libertarian Party could sit up there and put itself saying, we are for a convention of states, and work on local houses one at a time to get that pushed through. But the focus on a federal level to try and win federal elections basically squanders the resources that you have on issues that you're not going to win on a federal level. If you're truly interested in pushing the libertarian agenda, the only way you're going to be able to do that is by maintaining an almost total focus on local elections initially until you can build up a strong power base. And it has to be done in certain regions. You got to figure out, okay, which regions am I getting support? How can I build then from those regions to start to go out from there? Currently, there are libertarians in every single state, but they're so few in number that they can't coalesce. And there's no regional support. There's no large regional support anywhere. Libertarians do not have any state houses. They have no governorships.
I think we do have a congressman now. Somebody switched parties to the Libertarian last cycle.
Well, I mean, you have socialists too, but you don't have socialist parties running any of the state legislatures either.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you just said. Even though Gary Johnson or whatever other candidate the Libertarian wants to put up, I like seeing them do well. I certainly like doing that. I like seeing them do better than they have in the past. But it seems to me like we're running a marathon before we learn how to run the mile, by just trying to jam someone in the White House. And the other real big problem that I would see, even if we had won the presidency in some weird happenstance thing, if we had won the presidency, I would actually be a little bit concerned, because what about Congress? Is Congress filled with Republicans and Democrats and people who are going to stonewall the Libertarian president every step of the way? And who is the blame going to be laid upon when things don't work out and nothing gets done?
Well, you have to understand the way the federal government is, the way our government is structured. The way our government is structured is that if you're trying to affect domestic policy is affected directly by the legislature, not by the president. They're the ones that hold the purse strings. They're the ones that do the laws, not the president. The president's primary, he can sign a law, or he can choose not to sign a law. So if you're really pushing a domestic agenda and that's your primary concern to try and work things from a domestic point of view, then the presidency should be the last thing you're thinking about.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The problem with it though is most people, I would venture to guess, don't actually understand how our government works. And so it doesn't matter how it works in a sense, because people will ignorantly lay blame on the president when the president might not have had anything to do with whatever they're laying blame on them for, if that makes any sense.
Well, it makes sense, but the focus is still, you're using the focus is still on national level politics. You gotta get away from that. Like I said, if you really wanted to affect things and you want to do it in as quickly as possible, you should create a platform that says we're going to work with the states to see how many states we can flip into the column for convention of states. Currently, there are 11 states that have voted for a convention of states. You need
MC.
Mhm.
I do have a concern about convention of states. That is like the wild, wild west. They can change everything.
Yeah,
Absolutely
but it's the
everything.
only way you're going to change the structure currently, because
You're
otherwise,
right.
it's going to too many things. There are too many issues. There's too many things that are wrong, and all it comes down to is the structure has been distorted. The only way to fix the structure back into a non-distorted state is a convention of states. And yes, I do understand and I do agree that there are major risks with the convention of states.
Yeah, the socialists could win, but I don't want you to respond yet. Pirate hasn't talked for about 10 minutes. Do you have anything on this before we move on to the next bullet point? Because there's only 2 left in economics, and I was thinking we could do an after show after where we get to know Libertarian rants for a little bit if he wants to stick around. So we'll go off air and just bullshit.
Actually, I had one last thing to say, and then I've actually got to take off. I'm going to go play some God of War 3 and then hit the hay because I've got to be up early. But in response to the whole getting rid of the Department of Education, yeah, that needs to be an overnight thing if you can push it that fast. It needs to be done as quickly as possible. Because, MC was completely right about it. It's something that just can be way too easily exploited. It could be brought back to life through exploitation, and then the whole thing could just be fucking derailed if given too much time. So there's what needs to happen there is people need to plan for the event. Plan that, okay, the Department of Education is going to end. We need to, plan for the aftermath of that. All right, and they need to get something set forth. I don't know what that plan is, and I'm not here to tell you any sort of plan. I'm just saying you need to take some time before you just rip the Band-Aid off overnight and say, okay, this is what's going to happen afterwards. Personally, I think that it'll be kind of chaotic at first in the education system, but I think that the real educators would rise out of the chaos and take control, take the reins, if you were to do that. So there's my
okay. Well, what I'm worried about with the convention is, states could leave, right? Like anything can happen at this convention. The whole frame of government can change theoretically, right, MC?
That is correct. In the Convention of States, you can rewrite the entire structure of the federal government.
We could end up with a king. I know, not that we would, but we could, right?
Theoretically, yeah.
I don't know if that's a good idea. What about an amendment? You know what I mean?
How many amendments are you going to sit up there and put in? You got to remember, amendment has to be very specific. The problem with the federal government right now is it's not just one part of the government is out of whack. It is whole swaths of the government is out of whack. You've got a federal bureaucracy that's much too large. You got a judiciary that's completely out of control. All right, how are you going to rein those two sectors in? You got a legislature right now that currently, all right, is non-functional because of the bureaucracy trying to feed that bureaucracy. Yeah, I understand your fears. I understand what could happen. All right, but the reality is that if you're going to fix the federal government at this point in time, you can't do it piecemeal because there's too many things going wrong. And while you try to fix one little thing, what's going to happen is that the people who don't want that stuff fixed will start distorting something else somewhere else down the line. And they'll do it the same way they always have, which is they'll play upon somebody's fears or they'll play upon somebody's emotions, and then they'll let something else get through, all right, or push some other policy that distorts it in a different way.
Libertarian Rants, you got anything on constitutional convention before we move on? There's only 2 points left in the platform, like I said. So
No, that's fine. Actually, I wanted to say something about what Pirate said, although it seems like he left, which was that I think that was fine. I liked what he said, and I agreed to a great extent. And I certainly share the concerns that MC has said that, yeah, if you do it piecemeal, you'll have these issues. I'm not immune to having that concern. I did like what Pirate said as far as, look, rip it off, rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak, but say, hey, here's the date that Band-Aid's going to be ripped off. And this is a compromise I would easily make. In fact, I think it's a good idea. Have the Band-Aid be ripped off, not at a faraway date.
Let me give you another reason why it has to happen rapidly. Okay? We don't live in a bubble. All right? World events can have a dramatic effect on the country and can derail any kind of piecemeal approach that you attempt. Because whether we like it or not, and I've tried to explain this to people, wars aren't just decided by one party or another party. The United States saying, well, we don't want to go to war with anybody, that all sounds well and good, but there might be people who want to go to war with us or drag us into a war. It's a lot easier to do that. In fact, in our early nation, that's exactly what would happen. So to say that, okay, well, everything remains stable while we slowly go through this change is ignoring his history. So the faster you can make these changes, and I realize that they're drastic, and I realize that they're going to cause havoc, right? But the faster you can make these changes, the less time that you give the rest of the world to have an effect that derails everything.
Just two things real quick. It's either you do it gradually or you put a time, you say, hey, at this time it's totally gone all in one shot.
Once again, you're allowing, if you do that and you do a sunset type of law, you're allowing other events and other Congresses that are dealing with those events to say, okay, that's not a priority anymore. We're going to put it on hold, and it never happens.
Well, look, I wish I could tell the future, and if you got to do what you're advocating and it worked out okay, then that's fine. But here's the other issue that needs to be brought up. If we did it your way and we just ripped that Band-Aid off, you yourself admitted, and I think most people would admit, that chaos would have to take place for at least some time. It might be worrisome and certainly play on the fears of people at that time. And I would hope that if we rip that Band-Aid off, people wouldn't say, look at this chaos, we got to institute the Department of Education or something similar right away, again, because of all this chaos.
Which is one more reason why I said that you have to, in order to do it, if you're going to have to do it through a convention of states.
Okay, yeah, and that's fine. I was talking about the Federal Reserve, not Federal Reserve, Jesus, the federal government, speaking through that lens, because that's what we were talking about before, I thought. Maybe I misheard, but that would be another concern I would have of doing it that way. People would freak out because chaos would ensue. I think we could all agree, but it would be productive chaos. But I would hope people could recognize that it's productive chaos before they go back to our old ways.
Well, wait, I have a question though, and it's not necessarily about American politics, but Brexit. Do you think that's what they're going to do, and is reverse it because they're doing it slowly? MC, do you think that's a vision going to come true?
Yeah, I think it's going to fall. It's going to die on the vine. They're going to drag it out till it dies on the vine.
That's what I thought you. That's
they don't have the the impetus right now, all right, to go in there and go hardcore, bore right ahead. And this is for the British, it's a foreign policy decision, all right. But they do not have the political will right now. The government doesn't have the will, from a foreign policy standpoint, to go in there and rip the Band-Aid off and end it now. They could have ended it how many days ago? They could have ended it how many months ago?
Well, they triggered Article 50, didn't they, or whatever it's called? It might be Article 50.
Well, yeah,
NATO,
but that's their quote unquote. Well, we're going to take our time and we're going to come to mutual understandings. You're not going to come to a mutual understanding. You got one side that's basically saying we don't want you to leave, and the other side that's kind of wishy-washy about leaving. How do you think that's going to end?
Not in a war like the last secession crisis here in the States, but anyway, yeah. I just wanted your.
You don't think it's going to lead to a war? I think there's a lot closer. There's a lot of places that all sorts of violence could break out, and civil unrest could lead to all sorts of things, and you don't know how that's going to play out.
You know, like what about Poland siding with England? Could it really go into a war in Europe?
No. Well, a war in Europe would start for a lot of reasons. It won't be because the Polish.
Well, the Polish don't want the immigrants, and that's kind of why Brexit.
Yeah, that's not gonna have any effect. The Polish economy is not big enough to distort the structure of the EU at this time. You know, maybe 50 years from now, maybe 30 years from now, who knows? But right now, it does not have the economic clout to do anything.
Yeah, and I can't think of any other countries on the top of my head that might leave the EU. Is Turkey? Turkey's in NATO, but not the EU, right?
No, Turkey's in the EU too, kinda.
Could it leave?
Well, I don't know what it's going to do, to be honest. I mean, Turkey is a big wild card. Turkey could cause instability in the region and then kick off a war. And depending upon how chips fall, lots of things could happen, because you don't know what Erdogan's going to do. Erdogan could kick off a war simply because he tries to seize all of Cyprus.
So could NATO turn on him? Could they just write him out of the treaty and turn on him?
Sure they could. Will they? I don't know. It also could be that he destabilizes other areas where it causes the Russians to finally get fed up and stomp on him. At which point we are going to have to take some kind of action, and we can slowly get dragged into it as more countries get affected directly. There's lots of ways this could go. And that's totally ignoring the crisis that North Korea is causing. Because North Korea is destabilized in the Middle East as much as any other country that's not bordering it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the EU is looking shaky at best right now.
Well, the EU may reform itself if the British do not leave. However, all that's going to do is it's going to cause people to start demanding the EU change. And the EU politicians are definitely going to resist that. You want to talk about how things could lead to civil strife? That's one of the examples that could cause it.
Well, isn't Antifa over there in Europe also? And they're raising ruckus too?
Antifa is just another communist movement from just like the Red Army Brigade, etc. They've been around forever. Yeah,
but you have that mirrored by kind of a fascist type movement also in places like Italy? I don't know.
I think the worry would be if somebody decides to use the Antifa, all right, to destabilize the other nations. Now, of course, the one when you say that, the one who comes to mind, of course, is the Russians. But they would have to have a reason to want a completely destabilized Europe. Currently, they use Europe as one of their trading partners, so there's not a reason for them to try and destabilize it.
Yeah, they have that pipeline, right?
Well, but that's not a reason.
Oil over there.
Right, but that's not a reason to destabilize all of Europe. If they can convince the Europeans to accept the pipeline, more power to them. They're still shipping oil around the world. It's just that they would be able to.
They have one ocean port, don't they?
Well, they got the whole Pacific. They got the whole Pacific port. Don't forget that. They've got one
okay.
They got the obviously the Black Sea ports. All right. Now, granted, that's controlled by the Bosphorus. All right. So that's a bottleneck that they don't appreciate. All right. But they do ship oil through there. They can also ship through. They do have a Baltic Sea port that they don't really ship a whole lot of oil through. The pipeline would definitely be better. Currently, the way they ship oil around is the same way Canada ships oil to the United States today, which is via trains. A pipeline would be far more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why he's pushing for it. But the U.S. is trying to leverage against it, correct?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't think the U.S. would really be all that adverse to it, aside from the U.S.'s concern has always been if Europe becomes too reliant upon the oil from the Soviet Union or the ex-Soviet Union, the Russians, then the Russians then would gain a lot of power and clout over those nations, all right, by just threatening to cut off the oil supplies. All right. So, but to be honest, the havoc of that happening, and it could happen, would be minimal simply because, okay, so they cut off oil supplies. It's not like the Europeans don't have the ability to get those resources in other ways. So I don't think the U.S. has really got a hard, we don't want this to happen viewpoint of the Russians from that kind of economic expansion.
Yeah.
The problem with the Russians is the same problem that's always been with the Russians, which is when the wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed, a lot of countries freed themselves, specifically the Baltic countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. They're small little nations. You would think that they're not very important, but they are to the Russians because they have coastline, and the Russians would like to take those countries back over. Those countries themselves, however, didn't appreciate the Soviet Union to begin with, and they don't appreciate the Russians now. So you have the Russians once again setting out in its initial phases to go back to the way of going, okay, we want to expand. Well, if they can't expand economically successfully, the worry, of course, still remains. Then they'll try to expand physically by recreating the Russian Empire.
I don't know if Putin wants to push that line right now. Their economy is not doing the best, right?
Well, Putin is trying to feel his way into the Russian New World and what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable to the Russian people. You got to remember the Russian people lived under communism for so long that restrictions on rights is not a big deal to them. Restrictions on private property, restrictions on movement, restrictions on freedom of speech. These are all new concepts to them that they've never really fully embraced because they haven't lived they haven't lived free long enough to appreciate what freedom will give you. Now, over time, they'll get to that point. But that's why when Putin does crackdowns in several different areas, you don't see a whole lot of disruption within the Russian populace as a whole. Yeah, you have a few demonstrations here and there, but to be honest, they're fairly minor. I mean, if you compare them, for example, to like Venezuela.
No, but he cracks down on political opponents like nobody else. Doesn't he just fucking assassinate them most of the time?
There's no proof to that. There's a lot of smoke about it, yes, but there's no real proof.
I got poisoned with like uranium-259 or some bullshit.
Polonium, I think it was.
Whatever. Yeah, I didn't know exactly. I just pulled a name out of my ass. It's radioactive.
I mean,
whatever the fuck.
Once again, did they catch the person who did it? No.
Well, that's how they work. Shit, the CIA never gets caught.
Well, actually, the Russians have been known to use ricin, but that's a different issue.
Libertarian rant, so you back so we can hit the next bullet point. We've been talking about Europe for about 5 or 10 minutes now. So, I guess not. We'll keep talking about Putin. So, who's cooler, Putin or Donald Trump? They met each other not that long ago, right? Who was more presidential? Who was more presidential? Well, Putin is like cooler, right? The Russians love him. Like half the population here hates Donald, you're fired Trump, right? So
well, that's true. But once again, what are you looking for? The United States presidents have always been looked upon with a different kind of an eye. Now, granted, some of them, like the standard that was set by George Washington and the bearing that George Washington had, I mean, very few presidents have held up to that standard, though. All right. I think that Trump is more along the lines of Jackson. All right. The Washington elite, the Washington socialites absolutely despise Donald Trump.
That's the angle I've been taking. I argued that with Ogre. I literally said he reminded me of him.
Well, there are a lot of similarities. There's a lot of dissimilarities too, but there's a lot of similarities from how he is. He is a populist, all right, in a large extent. Now, there's good things about that, and there's bad things about it. One of the problems that he's encountering now is he's realizing without a populist base is okay for certain things, but you need a how do I put this? An ideological base, all right, to toe the line. And it takes the ideology. If you had an ideological base, it would be easier for him to coalesce support behind him.
All right, so Libertarian Rants is back. I know I'm not sure if Wolfshot is yet, but she's just going to argue with us anyway. Here's the next one. We only have 2 left. So 2.10 on the platform, healthcare. We favor a free market healthcare system. We recognize the freedom of individuals to determine the level of health insurance they want, if any, the level of healthcare they want, the care providers they want, the medicines and treatments they will use, and all other aspects of their medical care, including end-of-life decisions. Therefore, assisted suicide on this platform. I didn't know that, but okay. People should be free to purchase health insurance across state lines, which I agree with that 100%. We'll start with Libertarian Rants. Are you for assisted suicide? I said in our party's platform, and I don't know if I am for that or not. I'm on the bench. Okay, you didn't pick up quick enough. MC, where do you stand?
The question very simply is what do you mean by assisted suicide? Do you mean the doctors push the button and kill them?
In Oregon, they give you, if you have life, you're going to die from cancer, they will go to your house and they'll give you either a pill or a shot that will kill you. That's
if they actually perform, putting the pill in their mouths or physically giving them the shot, then no, I'm dead set against it.
Yeah, in Oregon, that's what made the law so controversial. They will administer the shot. They will.
No, I'm totally against it.
I'm not sure if that's the Libertarian Party's stance on it. Maybe it's like, here's the pills, you do what you want, but I'm not sure.
The fact that you're having somebody else perform the act takes away the person who the off chance that the person decides, wait a minute, I don't want to do this, you're taking it out of their hands. If a person commits suicide and wants to commit suicide, you really can't stop that. I can understand that. But if you're the one actually doing the killing, you are doing the act that's killing the individual, all right, then you are taking that right out of their hands, and you're subsuming that role to yourself.
Yeah, like Dr. Death, isn't that what they called him?
Well, Dr. Kevorkian. Now, Kevorkian created a machine that people could push the button, and then that would give them the fatal medicine and kill themselves. But Dr. Kevorkian went to jail because he went in one case on camera and basically was doing a rant and walked over and then pushed the button. That's why he went to prison.
Hello, sorry. Internet crapped out after I got back. It's bad here.
Oh, it's all good. We're on the healthcare debate, and so the Libertarian Party wants free. They want you to be able to get health insurance across state lines and all that stuff, of course. Okay. but they also believe in assisted suicide. How do you stand on that? Because I think that's the most controversial thing in the platform so far.
Oh, okay. No, I did hear what MC just said. And I subscribe to the same line. I think when you're dealing with life or death, the you're dealing with a very severe situation, obviously. So I think that it needs to be done by the hand of the person who wants this to be done. It kind of is similar to the whole should suicide be illegal. It's kind of a ridiculous thing, but if someone has a terminal illness or they believe to have a terminal illness, do they have a right to kill themselves? Kind of a stupid question without an answer or an answer that matters, because once they kill themselves, it's all over with. So yeah, I think if somebody wants to die because of something, they should be allowed to do it. They should be allowed to have it set up for them. But the final act of pulling that trigger or pushing that button or whatever the hell it is should be done by that person, if possible, obviously.
Yeah, I live in Oregon. They legalized assisted suicide, and I think '03. So the doctor's actually able to perform the procedure.
Yeah, and there was a case, I forget exactly, maybe it was in Oregon, I'm not sure, but it was actually documenting this girl who had a terminal illness, and the doctors, I believe, gave her medication to kill her, basically. You know what? Actually, I might be misremembering it. It might have been she just had this medication and everyone around her knew what she was going to do. So it documented her, basically her final hours, final minutes. And she spent some time with her friends down on the beach. And then when she was all done, having a good time with them, she took this concoction to kill herself. It's a tragic, depressing story, but she has the right to do that if she wants to, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's to herself. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I don't want, on the healthcare debate portion, I think it's on the next portion we'll do next stream, is the abortion issue. And I don't want to touch that right now. So, what do you think about insurance?
Oh, girl, you don't want me on that stream.
Wolfshot, actually, what do you think about assisted suicide?
What do you mean, like death with dignity?
Yes, that's the law in Oregon. That's exactly what it's called. Yes, where the doctor will administer the medicine. Well, it's not medicine, the poison to kill you.
Yes, I'm for it.
Do you want to elaborate or leave it there? Because there's one more bullet point, and then we're gonna go ahead and end it and maybe bullshit offline. So.
Well, I mean, it's anecdotal, but
anyway.
My grandmother suffered for like 2 weeks. They basically starved her to death when they could have just ended her life. But that's anecdotal.
That's messed up. Yeah, that's messed up. I just don't know if the doctor should be able to administer it. I kind of side with MC and Libertarian rants on that, but it is Oregon law right now that the doctor can do it. So
I'm different than y'all, obviously. I mean,
well, and I said at the beginning, I'm kind of on the bench. It is freedom of choice, right? So I don't know.
I mean, yeah.
Well, my issue remains the choice part. The problem isn't the assisted suicide part. The problem is when you're doing the killing. You're not assisting a suicide. You're killing someone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, and that's where I agree with you.
Like I said, with Dr. Kevorkian, Dr. Kevorkian did everything right up until the point where he pushed the button to kill the guy. That's why he went to jail.
Yeah, but the people wanted him to do it.
But you
fucking put a gun to their head.
Up to the point. Well, you could put a gun to somebody saying, "Do you want to die?" and a person says yes. You pull the trigger. That doesn't mean you assisted suicide.
I don't know. It depends on the context of what we're talking about.
Well, but that's why if you're going to commit suicide, it's a personal act. It should be a personal responsibility to take that action. It shouldn't be someone else killing you. That's not suicide to me.
I will have to disagree. because I would rather have a doctor kill me than myself because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Like I said, he could set up everything, and then he says, "Okay, all you have to do is push this button."
Then I still think that's murder. In your logical whatever, in your logic, that would still be murder.
No, and as long as he's not the one pushing the button, it's suicide if the person who wants to die is the one pushing the button.
Or
The
it
one
would
who
be
actually
manslaughter,
delivers,
technically.
the one who actually delivers the
It would
medicine.
actually be murder. It would actually be manslaughter.
Well, okay, yeah, well.
I'm just saying. I mean, you want to go that route, it would be manslaughter.
Well, but I mean, for me, I consider it suicide. That to me is a suicide. That's where I realize that it's kind of dancing on the head of a pin, right? But it is a very sharp line of distinction. And the reason I say that is because at the point when the person is getting ready to inject the medicine, the other person could be saying no, and you've removed that ability as they push the plunger down or as they push the button, and it's too late.
Well, that's why you signed a contract beforehand.
So can you sign a contract to be eaten by somebody then?
I mean, if that's how they want to die, I don't imagine that would be painless.
Well, I mean, if you're a strange enough person to say I would like to be consumed by another human being, and you sign a contract,
I mean,
I guess.
you guys
just to let
talk
you
about-
guys know, I'm
you guys talk
referencing.
about stewardship of your own, taking responsibility for your own actions, et cetera, correct?
I'm referencing a specific case that happened in Germany, actually.
Yeah, I know. The guy fucking
I remember
got
that.
this dude and ate him and ate his penis and blah, blah, blah. And he was charged with murder and he filmed it, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I know exactly.
Holy shit.
I
I was
remember.
gone for a minute. You're on the cannibalism?
It could be, yeah, we can connect cannibalism with, death with dignity.
Did you leave and then 2 seconds later you come back and it's like, what the hell? Now, it's funny because when I heard about that story, and I'm taking your word for it, it was in Germany. I forget exactly.
Indeed, it was.
In Germany, when I was reading about it, first of all, I was like, well, that's disgusting, and that's something I would never take part in because that's nasty as hell. But there was a part of me that felt like, well, at least it was all voluntary.
Oh my god, that made libertarians feel bad.
Like
It's
I
okay.
said, if you leave it to the individual to actually do the act that kills, all right, and they're killing themselves, that's one thing. I don't believe that you should be able to engage somebody else to kill yourself.
Well, wait a minute, though, MC. There is places on the darknet where, like, you can go and offer yourself up to be eaten. Is that freedom of choice?
That's insanity. They should be locked away.
Fair enough, dude. Fair enough.
This isn't necessarily a response to anybody here, except when you said, oh, you made the libertarians look bad there. That's funny. I get it. But I do just want to point out that the difference, I think it's a very important distinction to be made between somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer, who forcefully took people, or however he did it, maybe he plied them with things, but somebody who forcefully takes somebody and eats them against their will as they were walking down the street, and somebody who says voluntarily to somebody, hey, you know what, I want to be eaten. Both are messed up scenarios I don't really enjoy thinking about much, and I might throw up, but I think there is a distinction that most reasonable people can see between those two scenarios. I'm going to stop talking about that now. All right.
Oh, yeah, there is a distinction, but there is one more bullet point left as well. Let's go to that. The last thing in economics, retirement and income security. I'm sure you guys will have lots to say on that. Retirement planning is the responsibility of the individual, not the government. Libertarians would phase out the current government-sponsored Social Security program. Remember, phase out is what it says. And transition to a private voluntary system. The most effective source for help for the poor is the voluntary efforts of private groups and individuals. We believe members of society will become even more charitable, and civil society will be strengthened as the government reduces its activity in this realm. Whoever wants to go first, go for it.
That sounds like more Fantasyland bullshit to me.
To be fair, Wolfshot, George W. Bush wanted to turn Social Security into a private account.
I don't
It is
give a
not
fuck.
fantasy. It is not fantasy. It was the Republican platform. Just
That's
what
that
9,
is
9,
so
10 years
that
ago.
is so cool. But the part what I'm talking about, not ending Social Security, the part what I'm talking about is where it says we believe that private charities and blah 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 and all other bullshit, it will be strengthened and people will just give up money for a private charity. Yeah. Okay.
I got
I
a
have to
couple websites
snort
for you.
more cocaine. I'll be right back.
Okay, you snort some cocaine. I got some websites for you. Patreon. I got another one. GoFundMe. What's the crowdfunding one where people are giving their money for people that might just maybe make a movie? Crowdsource or
Crowdfunding or something. I forget what it's called.
yeah.
Well, okay, let's
Yeah.
talk about something a little bit different here. All right. Let's talk about what those programs have done currently. Those programs, like it or not, have changed society. So the question is just by getting rid of that source, whether slowly or quickly, regardless, are you going to affect society and change the way society functions?
Well, I don't want
Because
to
that's what's going to be required in order for that vision of things to take place.
Well, we're talking about phasing out welfare and strengthening like the Patreons and the crowdfunding and GoFundMe. GoFundMe
Well,
helps how many
over
people are
time
dead?
that may come into being. All right. However, there's a lot of
That's the
other
phase out part.
there's a lot of other social issues that have to a lot of other social conventions that would have to start becoming accepted in order for that to take place. One of the things that used to happen prior to Social Security is charities were far more prevalent within the United States, and all of that's true. However, the vast majority of those charities, right, were funded through some kind of religious organization. They were almost all tied to some type of religious organization to utilize that kind of funding. Religious organizations currently don't even have the capital to do that like they used to anymore. So it would take time.
The Catholics and the Mormons do. They still have their organization.
They have aspects that and they still have, once again, they still have charitable funding, but the amounts that would be required to replace that are significantly greater than what either one of those two organizations could maintain. And the other thing about that is just by the fact that you do something like that, you are actually increasing the literal and figurative power, right, of those religious organizations. Currently, do you see anywhere that people want an increase of religious organizations in these type of events?
Fuck no. That's just me.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
plus charities.
Oh, what? Sorry, what?
Charities, when you give money to charities, it rarely goes to the people who need it.
That's not true. When you go to a local church like I have, and I'm an atheist, but I still give, my kids go to church. I'll give to that church. And it goes directly into a fund to help people with electricity. Not like, yeah, it does.
How do you
know? I know because my neighbors have used the fund. Like, I'm not rich by any means.
That's anecdotal, anyways.
Well, for private charities, it's on average, and there's different estimates out there, but it's around 70-30 is the split. Some say 75-25 of the amount of money that goes in versus the percentage that actually ends up in the intended recipients. So, you give $1 billion to a private charity, 750 million will end up in the hands of the people who need it.
I would love to find the asshole with $1 billion giving it to charity. I need to find him immediately.
No, actually,
stat.
Actually, a lot of billionaires have given away billions upon billions of their own wealth.
I need to find him.
But the real point is that if you give that hypothetical billion to the government, the exact opposite is true. About 75% is lost within the government. 20 or 30 to 25 is actually ends up in the hands of the intended recipients. It's a good point of comparison that I think more people should be made aware of.
I'll pass on the charities, but whatever.
Well, welfare is a charity, and it's a charity by the taxpayers. So the people that choose to give to these people would be giving. I'm not saying poverty would end. I'm just saying it would be a better way to do it, and it'd save the taxpayers money to be free to give to these organizations.
Yeah, but who says they're going to?
Nobody, but a lot of people are good people. I believe.
I swear to God, you are living in a fantasy world.
There are a lot of good people. I won't deny that. However, you still got to look at the fact that the way the government is currently structured has changed our society, and people are, in my opinion, are far more selfish than they used to be.
Look at FEMA compared to private charities. The private charities got to Katrina a hell of a lot quicker than FEMA ever did.
Well, that's a separate argument.
Well, MC, I think what you just said is very true, especially when you consider the fact that a lot of the federal welfare programs and war on poverty has removed a great deal of the incentive for more community, local, or state-based charities or programs to exist. It's, why do it? Why should I give up my money here when I just gave 10 grand in income tax for the federal government to give out that money? So I think that's very, very valid, and it's a point that I repeat to a lot of different people.
The problem is you would have to figure out a way to increase civic duty and civic mindedness, all right, prior to reducing that. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot, and I mean a lot, of people that live in the United States, the wealthiest country in the world, that would then become truly destitute. Now, currently, you can't say that. Currently, you don't see people in this country, whether anybody wants to believe it or not, that are absolutely destitute. Not like I saw in Korea, not like I've seen in other places around the world.
But MC, do you think that's with factoring in the rest of the economic platform? Because this is the last bullet point. I know you missed half of it, but there's also
it's a wonderful ideal, but once again, it's an ideal rather than a platform. Platforms are supposed to be things that are planks of a bridge to somewhere. Now, I realize that in the last 20 years or so, that the platforms by the parties, right, have pretty much been ignored by both sides, right, where no one looks upon them as platforms anymore, all right. But 25 years ago, when the Republicans came up with a platform, or the Democrats came up with a platform, they were spelling out what they were going to attempt to do when they won. And believe it or not, they did try to do those things. Now, things have gotten to the point now, for a variety of reasons, that that's not taking place, all right? But that's what the platforms were initially about. If you're talking about something like this, as far as a plank, you would have to come back with a more specific program, all right, that's going to change things directly, rather than a wish list, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wanted to actually say something back to you, Mad Dog, that you had mentioned, which is something that I was thinking. And again, I admit this is a little bit anecdotal, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen those crowdfunding, GoFundMe, Patreon, whatever those things are called. I forget the exact name of the one that I'm thinking of. But I've seen a lot of them posted on social media of friends on Facebook and things like that. And I always click on it, and despite the fact that I feel that most people are generally good, I still get a little bit of a shock when I see that, wow, this person broke their leg. One of my friends hurt their neck really bad. Another friend had their dog pass away and they needed it buried. Another friend had a relative die and they needed to pay for the funeral. The list goes on. It always shocks me. Wow, they just had an injection of thousands of dollars of just people. They posted it around the internet. Hey, we need some money for this. We can't pay for it, or it's going to really hurt us. And bam, they get thousands of dollars. So I think at the very least, that's at least one quiver against the idea that without government, nothing would be done for poor people and no one would give up money. There's more avenues than ever today to give people money when you have a little bit that you don't mind parting ways with.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. And when we go offline, I'll tell you a personal story about something kind of like that. But I don't want to throw it out there on the wide web. But is that on the Wolfshot? You got anything else to say on this? You haven't been talking for a while either. So
On what?
on charities and private and slowly phasing out Social Security. I kind of thought that'd be a bigger deal for people on the panel, but nobody really seemed to want to talk about it.
I mean, I could go on for a long time about it, but we're nearing 3 hours here, so.
All right, yeah. So Wolfshot, you got any last words? And we'll bounce out and just go into private chat. All right, MC, you?
He's AFK.
All right, Libertarian Rants. Give out your website or your YouTube one more time and your Twitter handle. I have his YouTube in the show notes, so you guys go sub. I really like this guy's channel. Check it out. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Oh, well, I mean, first of all, thanks an absolute ton for having me on. This is actually, I've had an awesome time. Politics, economics, that's stuff I love. I never really get to talk about it with anybody in my own personal life. So being able to come on here and vent like this and have this conversation is great. And that's a big reason why I started my YouTube channel as well, is, number one, I wanted to convince people that maybe they need the government a little bit less than they think. And number two, it's a good therapeutic thing for me. But so yeah, the YouTube channel is called Libertarian Rants. You'd have to put it in quotes if you're looking it up straight on YouTube, because it doesn't pop up on the first page or the second for that matter. And the Twitter handle is, what the hell is it? Libertarian RNT. Libertarian Rant without the A. So yeah, again, I really appreciate you having me. It's been an awesome time. I hope to do it again.
Yeah, man, anytime. And I am the Mad Libertarian. This is Mad Dog Productions. Like and subscribe. Have a good night.